we're happy to have had him, and we'll be happy in the future if he stays.
I'm hopeful. When you say confident or putting odds on it, it's, I think still a flip of a coin. But, I know that's a top priority for the organization and myself, so be laser focused on it until it's not.
That was John Mozeliak and Bill DeWitt Jr. at Cardinals winter warm-up over the weekend with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, there's a ton to get to today. We weren't in yesterday for Martin Luther King Day, so we've got all of the NFL's divisional round to recap. We've got a college football playoff final from last night to get into. The Blues have been up and down, of course, as is typically the case. So we'll get into all of that and so much more throughout the day today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube is available for you at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. However, we've got to start with the Cardinals. They took center stage over the weekend at winter warm-up. Myself and Tanner Hendrickson were both over there at Busch Stadium. Alex, of course, had his Blues coverage as well for you guys. My biggest takeaway from the weekend was everything that the team had to say about Nolan. It's the number one priority, or in the words of John Mozeliak, as you just heard, the number 1, 2, and 3 priority for the team. And I feel like the headline coming out of the weekend is that they don't need to trade Nolan. Now, they would like to trade Nolan, and I think Nolan would like them to trade him. But they don't need to trade Nolan. And the reason why I think that is important to dictate from the ownership and the front office to the fans is that, hey, this is not necessarily a money move. This is something that we've been wondering about all offseason, Alex. Now, it would be helpful. They would like to get that money off of the books, but they're comfortable with their current payroll if they had to go into the season. And I think that is important because they are currently at, if you trust the publicly available information, roughly $150 million in payroll. Last year, they were closer to like 175. So they've already slashed a good amount of payroll from the books. Doing another $20 million, $25 million means that this team wasn't comfortable getting above like $120 million, which is roughly what the Kansas City Royals are spending this year, and they're 20th in baseball. That is a far cry from where the Cardinals are used to being. So we wondered aloud, is that the goal? Sounds like the answer to that question is no, which I think is a good thing for fans. I think it speaks to where they're at right now. I'm not telling you got to be celebrating the fact that they have already slashed $30 million this offseason, but it's better than the alternative. Alex, as you saw some of the quotes that were coming out of winter warm-up this weekend, especially as it pertains to Nolan Arenado, what was your takeaway?
I mean, it was that I don't believe Nolan Arenado is going to be moved. Like, for a little bit, hearing the comments and reading the comments, it kind of sounded like the trucks were backing up a little bit for the Cardinals. Beep, beep, beep. Of like, hey, we got to get rid of Nolan Arenado to, no, we don't necessarily need to do that. Now, maybe this is not showing your entire hand while you're playing this poker game of trying to trade Nolan Arenado. But you're right, BK. Like, if they are still in the spot where it is a necessity to trade Nolan Arenado, then the team even takes a bigger hit than what it already has in terms of, well, now you're trading away what we discussed. Eric Fetty, Steven Matz, maybe Ryan Helsley, so that they can get to that threshold that they deem to what they needed to be to start the season. So with this tone, whether you believe it or not, this is good for the Cardinals because if Nolan Arenado is here, it's not like, well, now we got to completely blow up this team because we got to figure out how to handle Nolan Arenado. I don't believe that Nolan Arenado is going to be here during the rest of his contract with the Cardinals because when John Mozeliak is saying it's priority 1, 2, and 3 to get rid of the guy, kind of tells you where they're at right now. Both sides seem to need a split, and a little of that was the Cardinals saying, hey, look, we don't need to trade Nolan Arenado. We're fine with it if we get the gold glove third baseman. I still believe he's going to be moved. I just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, hearing them say that they don't have to cut more payroll, for me, showed, okay, whether they move on from Arenado or not, they don't have to pluck from their pitching depth, which is huge for this season because they, to me, have the deepest pitching depth that they've had in years. Now, I'm not saying it's great pitching because I still think there's some you would like more there to be desired. But, hey, you've got the depth. You've got young guys. You don't have to pluck from this pitching depth, and you can hopefully get through this season with like 6 or 7 starters. But for them to get to where they need to be going into the season, which, hey, look, they've said it publicly. It's been reported. Look, they probably need a bullpen arm. They probably need a right-handed bat potentially to come off of their bench. Then they have to trade Nolan Arenado. It is going to be money out before they can bring money in. And that's where they are right now. But to hear that they don't have to just, hey, we can't move Arenado, so we just got to start shedding payroll. You get a pitcher and you get a pitcher. That's pretty positive. And it shows me that they've got some room here, which is nice to see.
Here's the one question I did have, and maybe this is a dumb question. If they're okay with having his salary on the books, why not be willing to eat more of it so that you can get rid of him to open up that position?
They might be. That's the thing. I think it opens up that possibility.
Because that's priority number one, is to open up third base.
100%. And that's where I'm at, too. I thought there were a couple of different things. One, what TBone had to say. It tells you they don't need to trade away their starting pitching, which I think could speak to why Eric Fetty is still here. Two, it speaks to what you're talking about there, Alex, is it opens up more opportunities. And I also found it interesting. We didn't play it in the clip, but Mo did say, or he was asked, hey, is this at a point where Nolan needs to expand the list in order for you guys to be able to trade him? And Mo said, no, not yet. He made it very clear, not yet. It wasn't a blatant, no, he does not have to do it. It was not yet. And I do think we're going to get to that place. If for example, Boston Red Sox end up signing Alex Bregman. If we get to that place, Arenado's probably going to have to go to Mo and be like, hey, if you want to be traded, you got to tell me like 5 or 6 other teams that you're willing to go to. And then maybe what you're saying, Alex, allows that to happen. Maybe instead of eating $5 million a year, the Cardinals eat $10 million per year on the deal. And the goal, instead of just getting rid of the money, is to actually open up that playing time for those young guys that they would like to see in the lineup. I walked away from this weekend. Now, full disclosure, a couple of years ago, I fell for the Dakota Hudson talk, hook, line, and sinker.
Me too.
And so I guard against that now. I try to have my guardrails up a little bit when I go to events like this. It's always going to be happy talk. Nobody's failed yet. Nobody's gotten into the regular season and struck out 3 times in a game with the bases loaded, right?
That's because we're going to be great this year after hearing them a winter warm-up.
Best shape of their lives, I've been told by 17 different players.
I walked away from the weekend feeling like they have a plan. And there have been a lot of times in the past where I have not necessarily walked away from the weekend feeling that way. It feels like everybody's on board. Everybody understands where the team is at. Hey, Wilson Contreras had the opportunity to go. He said, I would like to be here. And he explained that over the weekend and said, listen, I gave my commitment. I wanted to be here. I told them when I came, I want to leave this place better than when I got here. And that's obviously not the case right now. So he's not leaving yet. He's willing to move to first base in order to make this thing work. He also talked like a leader that they need inside of that clubhouse. Sonny Gray said, hey, I've been here for a year. They're right. They needed to do a lot of these changes. It's like, oh, okay. It took you 1 year to learn what the Cardinals took 8 to be able to understand. So I walked away feeling a little better about where they're at for 2025. I don't know how to feel about the long term, Alex. This is something that over the weekend I felt like the DeWitts had some, I thought, better comments. TBone, tell me if you disagree with this. I thought they were better on the stage yesterday than they were at the end of the season presser, where it felt like everybody had a different message they were trying to sell.
I'd agree with that. I didn't hear a moment where I was like, oh no, we didn't just say that, did we?
Yeah. Well, there was one point in time where they did say, hey, baseball's a tough business, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. That one, I do remember. But that was like the first answer. Yeah. I don't think I'd even hit record yet on my phone.
So that was one. But other than that, I felt like they were pretty good. He did answer a question towards the end of his interview about payroll and where it is going to be in the future. Because I think there were 2 questions relating to, hey, what you going to spend, DeWitts? 1, it's a plan for this year, and Arenado basically dictates that. 2, what is the plan for the future of your payroll, and is it going to get back to where it previously was, or is that just a sign of the times? Here's what Bill DeWitt Jr. had to say about that.
Well, I think if the current process plays out as we hope and expect that it will, if you're talking about payroll as an example, we'll be back, doing what we did before. And I think, we have every opportunity to be top team into the future. So I'm really concerned about that.
Okay. If that was a little low for you guys, he basically said, hey, payroll's probably going to return to form. They did not fully commit to that, though, Alex. At any point, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, TBone, I never once heard him say, yeah, we're going to get back to our payroll where it was. Never once was that specifically said.
That's why he was mumbling. He was hoping nobody could hear him. He's like,
and I really think that is an important thing here, because I don't know that they know that to be true. I think right now it all depends on what happens with their direct-to-consumer products, with the TV side of things. I think a lot of it depends, and people will be mad about this, and I don't blame you necessarily, on the ticket sales for the coming years. And a lot of it depends on, hey, are these young guys as good as they seem to think they are internally? Because they're optimistic, or at least they're selling that, Alex. If they end up being a decent team this year, ticket sales probably will go up a little bit. If they're not a very good team, though, ticket sales are going to decline, as they should. People don't want to pay to see a crap product. And what will be an interesting discussion next year this time is, okay, the team wasn't very good. That was by your own doing. You chose to do this. People didn't go because you chose to go that path. Are you now going to invest, or is that going to be what ends up having to have the payroll once again slashed a little bit? The future to me is a little more uncertain. The immediate future, the long-term future, uncertain. The immediate future, I feel pretty good about where they're at going into 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wait-and-see approach for 2025 because you've got a lot of these young talents, and I'm not going to disagree with that, but what are they going to pan out to be? I got to be honest with you, BK. I got a little pre-mad when I heard the comments from Bill DeWitt.
Okay.
Now, don't get upset with me, but this was the quote that kind of stuck in my craw when I read it. And I read it a couple of times, T-Bone, because, I like to reassert myself to find out, like, hey, am I getting too upset with this? You have to be realistic of where you are in the cycle. We've made every effort to have the best teams that we can have, but it's at a sacrifice. We haven't had draft choices because we've lost them when we've signed players. We've generally picked low in the draft. The best way to build a championship in my club, in my view, is to have good young players coming through the system. Now, this is why it's stuck in my craw. You know the last time, BK, that the Blues had consecutive seasons to where they picked in the top half of the draft?
15 years.
1996, 1995.
Pretty good.
From 95 to 96, they selected 12th and then 3rd overall. For the remainder of the stretch, with the exception of J.J. Weatherholt and their draft pick this year, they've selected bottom half of the league.
Okay, I thought you said Blues.
Did I say Blues?
I think
You
you
said
did.
Blues.
I meant
I was like, I'm
Cardinals.
pretty sure there was consecutive years in there. If maybe I missed.
No,
I was
that
going to
was
say
my
we're in a
mistake.
retool too as the Blues.
Whatever. I was like, it's
Sorry.
it's fine. I'm going to let them cook.
Cardinals. We're talking Cardinals, ladies and gentlemen.
I
No.
was a little surprised, and then the Blues had suddenly selected J.J. Weatherholt. I was like, man.
This is why it bothered me, because to sit there and say, like, well, we haven't had a lot of draft choices. We've been picking at the bottom of the draft, and so, like, we're a developed team, and we haven't been able to develop. For the last 30 years, you have been picking in the bottom of the draft. You've been finding some talent that's helped you, but you know what you've done? You've been aggressive in the trade market. You've been aggressive in the past to say, hey, our team has got a hole in certain areas. Let's go out and address it. With the exception of finding Albert freaking Pujols late in the draft, you have never been a team that sat there and say, well, we're a draft and develop team. Yeah, you've been drafting and developing 20th overall picks, 26th overall picks. So to your point, BK, of why the future is uncertain, I feel like the Cardinals are telling us what they used to be and kind of lying about it. Because they've never been a team that's been we're a draft and develop squad. No, you are we get really good complementary pieces, and then we go out there and we assess the trade market and say, damn, look how good that guy would be.
Go through the Cardinals' recent history and look at who their star was on the team. Outside of Albert Pujols, who is the exception to literally every rule, it'd be like pointing to Tom Brady and be like, hey, you know what we need to do? We need to draft and develop a superstar quarterback that we drafted in the 6th round or later.
Hell yes.
Great idea.
That is a plan.
Great idea.
It's a good plan.
Can you show me like 5 examples of that in the history of the NFL? The answer is
absolutely.
probably no. The reason why I bring this up is because I feel as though the plan is always, hey, we got to find our next Albert. We got to develop our next Albert. Cool. Can you show me the examples of that? The answer for the Cardinals is not really. The answer for most teams is no. It's really hard to develop an Albert freaking Pujols. So what the Cardinals have done in the past is, okay, we're going to develop the connective tissue for the team, and they're still really good at that. They still develop, I know people get mad, they still develop Brendan Donovan. They still develop Lars Nootbaar. They still develop Michael Ciani. Like, these are helpful, useful pieces. Hell, Pedro Pajes. That's a piece that is really nice to have as a number 2 catcher on a cheap contract, good defensively. Like, these are important things. Alec Burleson, a really nice piece to utilize. They have struggled to develop stars for 30 years inside of their own system. This is not new. And so that's where I do push back a little bit on this notion that they have always been a draft and develop team. No, you haven't. You have been for most of your roster, but then you supplement it with a star coming from the outside. And what I will find to be very interesting is, what does the modern landscape of the game mean for that?
Yep.
Has that changed? Because if it has, you're the Guardians. You're the Mariners. You're the Royals. You're the Rays. Like, you have to find a new model. And you talking about this draft and develop, cool. That is an awesome thing to be able to say. You can go years without finding that guy. And then you might find him or think that you did, and then he gets an injury, and it's like, oh, man, we had the guy, and then it's just over now. Like Alex Reyes, he was supposed to be the savior for the rotation. He gets hurt, and then it's just over like that. You know, like, you've had these guys. Look at, like, Joe Adell, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. Anybody thought about Joe Adell for a second over the last 5 years? Probably not. You know who he plays for? He's the Angels. And he was supposed to be a superstar player for them. Just hasn't worked. So that's the problem with being this kind of a team. It relies on you not only getting the right player, but then developing in the right way, and then getting super lucky.
Yeah.
That's not what the Cardinals have been.
Or super aggressive. Like, you know what they've been? When they've drafted players that have turned out to be, like, talented players, they've traded them for players that help them now.
But not stars. Who are the stars that they've traded away?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you could consider him a star, but, like, Braden Looper, he was drafted back in 95, 6th overall. No. They traded him for Edgar Renteria.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were going the opposite direction.
No.
I thought you were saying, like, Randy Rosarena, that he was a star that they traded away. It's like, no, they have that guy. He's Lars Nootbaar.
No, what I'm saying is they'll draft guys that they believe is going to be stars, but then they say, you know what, not it, and they trade them away. Looper was for Renteria. J.D. Drew, they traded to go get Adam Wainwright. They traded Brett Wallace, who was a 13th overall pick that was supposed to be the next third baseman, for Matt freaking Holliday.
100%.
They've always said, like, we'll draft, we'll develop, but when we've got guys that can help us now, let's go get them.
Here's the problem. Edgar Renteria gets a different contract in the modern game. Matt Holliday gets $300 million in the modern game. And that's what's changed on them. The landscape is what's changed.
You have to adapt as an ownership group if baseball's going to adapt.
And they seem to be, but it's not the way the Cardinals fans want it to be. Their adaptation to the modern game is not what you just said, of getting more aggressive and trading for those guys and then giving them the contracts that they deserve. Because they tried that with Arenado and Goldie, and they would consider that to be a failure, it appears. What their adaptation is, well, we can't go get that guy anymore. We got to develop him within. That is a really risky model. It can work. Maybe they're right on J.J. Weatherholt. Maybe they get a star out of this year's draft. Maybe Walker still develops into that guy. But if they don't, I don't know how they're getting it. So this weekend, I left feeling more optimistic about the 2025 season and a little bit more pessimistic about the long-term outlook for the Cardinals and what it's going to be. So it's just a really interesting time to be a Cardinals fan because you're seeing all of this around us, and the Dodgers added another bullpen arm this week. They added Tanner Scott, and then today added another one with Kirby Yates.
I would become a Dodgers fan.
They're creating a lot of money over there.
The Mets added Juan Soto this offseason. Like, things are not getting easier. It's getting more difficult to compete in the National League, and the Cardinals are choosing a new path. It might work. It is just a very different one for them than what they've been in the past. All right, he's Alex's TBone. I'm BK. In 15 minutes, the first college football playoff has come and went. What do we think about it? Did they get it right? Did they utilize this the right way? What did we make of the first college football playoff after it's all played out? We'll get into that in 15 minutes. We want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. And again, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, Lamar Jackson's weekend provided fodder for either side of the argument. I think we might come out on different ends on this one. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Looking to pass all the way, and down the field it goes, and it's intercepted right into the hands of Taylor Rapp. 2nd and 10. Awkwardness as Jackson Wrapped up, the ball's out. Scooped up, Von Miller. Von Miller with Hill chasing after him. And the Bills defense has a second takeaway.
Roll, flip it, got it.
Oh, the ball was dropped. He had the two-point conversion in his hands. Andrews did not hold on. One more snap, and then it's going to be for the fourth postseason meeting since 2020. It's going to be the Chiefs and the Bills. And immediately, Josh Allen goes straight for Lamar Jackson. He knew exactly where he was on that sideline and a touch of class.
Every time we're in situations like this, turnovers play a factor. Penalties play a factor. Tonight, the turnovers, we can't have that, you know? And that's why we lost the game, because as you can see, we're moving the ball wonderfully. It's hold on to the ball. I'm sorry for my language. It's annoying. I'm tired of
That is what it sounded like first on CBS, then from Lamar Jackson in his post-game press availability with Alex and TBone on BK. Alex, I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's an excellent quarterback, and he's one of the most enjoyable quarterbacks in the NFL to watch week in, week out. But I think we've gone a little overboard on trying to defend Lamar Jackson. I think there are so many people that, heard the Bill Polian comments of, hey, he's not a quarterback, he's a wide receiver. And then the draft where he ends up going 32nd overall, and he gets a lot of critique early on in his career of being a runner, not a thrower. And so I think, understandably, a lot of people got defensive over Lamar Jackson. We're like, hey, this guy's really good, and I don't think people are appreciating just how good he is. Totally fair and valid. That can exist along with understanding and just saying out loud, hey, man, the dude has struggled in the playoffs. And to me, Sunday was no different. Yes, he had a solid game overall, and that last drive was really impressive. But, man, they were in position to need that last drive because of Lamar. Because what you saw on Sunday from Lamar Jackson has been the issue with him, and it's clear he understands it. So why can't we acknowledge it? Lamar takes way too many sacks in the postseason. Took another bad one in this game against the Bills. People are mentioning the fumble and the interception, understandably, and importantly, they are not talking enough, in my opinion, about the sack that he took on 2nd and goal from the 2-yard line that forced them to end up taking a field goal in that spot. Alex, if he didn't take that sack and he had just thrown the ball away the way that Josh Allen always does or Patrick Mahomes always does in that spot, what ends up happening is they have 3rd and goal from the 2-yard line. On the next 2 plays, and I should have just done this anyways, but on the next 2 plays, you just run Derrick Henry up the middle. And you try to end up converting on 3rd or 4th down to get the touchdown. It was a potential 4-point swing because he took that sack. Lamar Jackson is a really good quarterback, an excellent regular season quarterback. But much like Peyton Manning early on in his career, he does have a playoff problem. And it's okay to admit as much. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because what I see from all of these national analysts feels like they're losing the plot here. And instead of having an honest critique, an honest review of what Lamar Jackson was in that game, they're like, hey, man, look at all of this stuff other than those 2 plays. Yeah, but guess what? Those 2 plays mattered. The team that wins the turnover differential wins 80% of the time in the playoffs over the past 20 years. 80% of the time. Hey, man, they lost 2-0. Boom. Game over. That's it. That is the story of the game. Lamar Jackson turned the ball over and Josh Allen didn't. What does Patrick Mahomes do really well in the playoffs? He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't take sacks. What has Josh Allen developed into in the playoffs? He doesn't turn the ball over, and he doesn't take sacks. Lamar needs to get there. He's not there yet.
You look at the stat line from that game, and a lot of people follow the line of defending Lamar Jackson. He threw for 254 yards and had 2 touchdowns. He was great. Look at what Josh Allen did. The reason that I've never been in on Lamar Jackson is because you're not a good game manager. Like, that second quarter was the quarter that the game felt over to me. And I know Baltimore had a great run in the 3rd. And you're right. You take that sack, you screw yourself over. But what Josh Allen did was he took the game and ran away with it in the first half and then said, cool, we're up. We'll just manage this game the rest of the way. And that interception and that fumble, those were 2 plays that you look at Lamar Jackson and you say, hey, in the postseason, man, you can't be making those 100%. Mistakes. You cannot manage this game like you manage a regular season game because every little thing that you do, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point. I actually thought Lamar looked good in the second half. I was like, damn, this is pretty impressive. And you were 1 catch away from Mark Andrews forcing this game to extras.
Potentially. There's still a minute and a half left, and I feel like nobody's mentioning that because
Josh Allen
was
would've-
going to end up kicking a field goal, but whatever.
They did a camera pan to his face, and Josh Allen was like instant God mode in that point. But the matter of fact is, you can look as great as you want in the second half and make your comeback, but you blew the game in the second quarter, and that's what winning quarterbacks don't do in the playoffs.
Lamar Jackson has multiple turnovers in a game for the first time since the AFC title game last year against the Chiefs.
Hey, they lost that one.
It is the fourth time in 8 playoff starts that Jackson has turned the ball over at least 2 times. Lamar Jackson has played in his last 5 playoff losses. He has 20 sacks that he's taken. He has lost 130 yards for his offense on those 20 sacks. He has 7 fumbles, 4 of which have been lost by his team.
My God.
And he has 6 interceptions. I'm sorry, man. That stuff really matters. We got a text, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. BK, Marky Andrews dropped the ball twice, especially the one on the 2-point conversion. That was the game because anything could have happened in overtime. Somebody from the 314. So are we not counting the Mark Andrews fumble because they were driving, and on that fumble, there should have been 3 turnovers, blah, blah. Yes, the Mark Andrews stuff matters. Of course. Mark Andrews, there's no other argument on Mark Andrews. He messed up. He fumbled, and he dropped the football on 2 plays where the Ravens could have won the game if not for those. But nobody's talking about Mark Andrews as an all-time great. People are talking about Lamar Jackson in that light, and he's the quarterback. So when you end up with a fumble where you literally just put the ball on the ground and you set up the Bills to score on the next drive, and then we're talking about an interception that I don't totally understand what happened on that play. He threw it to the defender. Maybe it was a sight adjustment that the guys just weren't on the same page.
It was snowing really hard out there. He couldn't see.
I don't know, but like
It was cold.
that's on Lamar, man. Like, we don't have to judge him in a different way than he judged himself in the post-game show. He said, this stuff can't keep happening.
He's talking about Mark.
It's got to get fixed. They ended up losing the turnover margin this one, 3-0.
Yeah, I like how he apologized for his foul language and then kept using curse words. It was awesome.
Road playoff teams with at least 3 turnovers and 0 takeaways were 0-33 since 1980.
Oh, if Mark catches the football, that could
Why
change.
would that be? No,
They
it
were
wouldn't have.
1-43 all time, with the lone win coming in 1977 in a game that went to double overtime. That's the game. Playoff football is a game of keep away, and nobody is worse at that game right now among the great quarterbacks than Lamar Jackson. Until that changes, he's going to continue losing in the postseason.
I feel like we're defending him because he's got all the MVPs. And you look at it and you say, oh, but he's an MVP.
He's great.
He's awesome. But there's a difference between being a regular season quarterback and a postseason quarterback. And I will take the postseason quarterback 10 out of 10 times.
Playoff football is about being boring. It is. Why did Tom Brady win in the playoffs? He took care of the football. Why did Peyton Manning early in his career struggle in the playoffs? Why did Josh Allen early in his career struggle in the playoffs? They didn't take care of the football
Trying
well
to be a
enough.
highlight reel.
And now we've seen that change. Josh Allen is this guy, dude. He never takes sacks. He almost never puts the ball in harm's way. Now, he really wanted to on Sunday.
Yeah.
He so badly wanted to pitch that ball with a lateral to James Cook.
Yeah, we all had the same reaction of, oh, don't do it.
Josh, stop!
His eyes did that scream too. He's like, don't do this.
You could see that he really wanted to do it, but he didn't. And that's the difference right now between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I still think there's a chance Lamar Jackson develops that capability, but right now he's not there. All right, a guy who has developed that already, Alex, early on in his NFL career, Jaden Daniels. Hot damn. TBone, how you feeling?
Yeah.
How you feeling today?
I feel
We
good.
got shouted down last week for taking the Commanders, and we stuck with it, stuck to our guns.
Well, some of us more than the other, but yeah, we did.
Someone backed down pretty quick, but it's fine.
Hey, did we have a bet on him or not?
Yeah, we did.
We had a bet on the Commanders' money line, the Bills' money line, and the Commanders over.
T-Bone was thinking, I'm going to keep all this money because
And the-
BK kind of stepped
Still haven't
away
got
from
my
it.
money,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it's
you
okay.
won't get it
The
either.
Commanders almost went over by themselves.
Yeah.
Alex, you said something interesting earlier today about Jaden Daniels and where he currently ranks among the best in the league. What'd you see from him this week, and what's it mean for you?
That's the face of the NFC. That's the quarterback face of the NFC moving forward. And watching him take care of business, I mean, one, you showcased that Minnesota Vikings game was totally a flaw in terms of the Lions defense. Jaden Daniels, in my opinion, ran that game perfectly. And I think he's going to take down the Eagles because I frankly thought if Matt Stafford wouldn't be a choke artist there at the end of that drive.
I still blame his center.
I mean, Nick Sirianni basically lost that game for his team. It's just Matt Stafford couldn't complete the pass in terms of not running it with Saquon. But here's the bigger thing. I look at the other teams in the NFC, and look, Jared Goff, incredible last couple of seasons. I think you see what's coming. I know you love your boy Jordan Love, BK. I don't see it. What I saw from Jaden Daniels was taking that moment and running away with it. And frankly, I think that is going to be the MVP of the NFC for a very long time moving forward.
I see no reason why that won't be the case. I don't really know what the weakness is here, man.
I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams if Ben Johnson's who we think Ben Johnson is, and I think that is the new Mahomes Allen in the NFC.
Biggest thing for me, again, avoiding the mistakes. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the first 2 playoff games. Now, I do think it's worth noting, because I'm with you, Alex. I love Jaden Daniels. I think he's been unbelievable in the postseason. He's gone up against 2 very advantageous defenses. He's done it on the road, which is huge. It's crazy. But he went up against the Bucs, who are not a good defense, and he went up against the Lions defense that really we had 1 week of evidence that they're good, and it was against the Vikings, who then imploded in the next round of the playoffs as well. So I think it's going to look a little different against the Eagles, who have an excellent defense, although a struggling offense right now. But I do agree with the premise. Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC right now. He is to the NFC what Lamar and Mahomes, let me say it this way. If Lamar was in the NFC, I think we're talking about him a little differently, but he's not, so it is what it is. If Lamar, Mahomes, or Allen were in the NFC, they would be what Jaden Daniels has become.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still want to see maybe a little bit more just from when they go up against the defense that you're talking about with the Philadelphia Eagles. But, man, like, you look across the NFC, it's hard not to look at other quarterbacks and go, that guy's ahead of them. Even, like, the guys that are kind of the stalwarts that have been around a while. Stafford, he's getting up there in age. Like, maybe Stafford could be ahead of him. But, man, Daniels, there's still more to grow in his game. Kyler Murray, been in the league for a while. Kyler Murray doesn't take care of the football and doesn't get his team to the playoffs. So, Jalen Hurts can't throw a football, apparently. Dak Prescott doesn't win in the playoffs. Still makes some of those mistakes that we're talking about. It's easy to look at Jaden Daniels and go, okay, if he can beat this Philadelphia Eagles defense, which is legit, I'm with you guys. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't say that he's the face of the NFC moving forward.
And here's a part that's just as impressive to me. Like, he's doing it, like, Terry McLaurin is a superstar. Not taking anything away. But, like,
Totally.
the surrounding cast beyond McLaurin, like, who do you get excited about?
Nobody.
I mean, the running game is, Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr., and, you've got, like, a couple of other wide receivers that it's like, okay, but, like, look at what the Detroit Lions have.
Totally.
Look at what the Philadelphia Eagles have. And he's doing that with just Terry McLaurin.
It's amazing. It really is. He's the 4th quarterback in NFL history to win multiple playoff games in their rookie year. The others to do so, Brock Purdy, Mark Sanchez, Joe Flacco. No rookie quarterback has ever won 3 playoff games in their rookie season. So the reason I bring that up, what we're seeing right now, because those quarterbacks, Purdy, Sanchez, Flacco, they did it with an excellent defense driving the way. They were a passenger, and those guys were, the defense was the one that won them those games. Jaden Daniels is the reason that the Commanders are winning these games. That's what's different. That's what feels different about him going out there and doing this. So it's been unbelievably impressive to watch. All right, in 15 minutes, we're getting to questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. But next, how do we feel after 1 year of the college football playoff? It finished last night with Ohio State taking home the Natty. How do we feel about the new format? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londahl Chevrolet and Johnny Londahl of Autoplex. Blues beat the Golden Knights in a shootout last night by a final score of 5-4. They'll be back in action on Thursday when Vegas comes here to St. Louis. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Garber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londahl Chevrolet and Johnny Londahl of Autoplex. CBLautos.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
We'll get to questions and answers in about 10 minutes, but right now, Alex, I've got a question for you. Ohio State wins the national championship last night, 34-23 against Notre Dame. It felt like it was kind of an underwhelming game. Notre Dame at the end gave it a shot, then they kicked a field goal. It was a strange decision there, and they end up kind of fading into the abyss. Ohio State wins the first national championship under this new format. Congrats to Ryan Day. Still got a punchable face. Congrats to Will Howard. Still not sure how good he is, but they won the national championship, and they earned it. They went through one hell of a run.
Did you see the video of the girl after the game that ran the golf cart into the wall with Ryan Day and Will Howard?
Yeah, they wrecked the golf cart with him, Howard, and there's like 2 other guys on it.
I guarantee she did that one on purpose, just because Ryan Day's face.
Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame. That's ridiculous. For them to be able to go through that kind of a path, pretty damn impressive. We're now through the first college football playoff, Alex. Come and win. What'd you think? What'd you think about the format? What'd you think about the way that we got here? Like, how did you feel about the expansion of the playoff now that we've seen it play out in front of us?
I frankly thought it was exactly what I was hoping for. Like, it created a lot of excitement. Would I have liked to see the ranking system flipped a little bit so you don't get the Arizona states and the Boise states with the byes? Absolutely. But I think those are easy fixes, and frankly, it was a trial and error run in that situation for the college football playoffs. But beyond that, I thought we had some really impressive and exciting games, in my opinion. Once you got past that first round where it was like, oh, geez, this has gotten ugly. We should have did 8 teams instead of 12 teams.
Or 4.
A lot of them lived up to the expectations. I thought Ohio State, Texas was awesome. I thought Notre Dame, Penn State, although TBone has forgotten it, was the best game in that college football bracket. And then you get this championship game. I know it felt like a blowout in that at halftime. And frankly, I did want to turn it back on. But I was like, I'll watch it. And then from there, Notre Dame made it interesting. And so that's all I can ask. When you expand the postseason and you keep me interested from the first round all the way to the end, that's a success in my book.
Yeah, I think the 2 things that they're going to have to fix or alter is, I agree with what you said about the buys. I don't think you give the 4 buys to the 4 highest conference
I don't think
champions.
they're going to. The ACC looking into this and saying, like, hey, we're going to change our conference championship game so the number 1 seed ends up getting the bye, and then we'll have the 2 and 3 teams play for that bid. That tells me everything I need to know. If they're doing that, conference championship bye or play-in thing is going to be gone.
Yeah, I think that's the number 1 thing for me that I think they need to change. And then I think they won't do it, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. I think we're all in agreement on this. They need more on-campus games for it.
Agreed.
I just, once you got to that I think it was the quarterfinals, around 8 after that, and you have those games on those neutral sites, they're fine. It's fun watching an Oregon, Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, but it just doesn't have the same luster. I think when you get a bye, you should also get a home game as well. I think the first 2 rounds definitely need to be on campus. Highest seed gets that home college football playoff game. And then when we get to the semifinals and the championship, that's when I'm okay to say, okay, let's go now to those neutral sites.
Few different things. One, thought it was right that they ended up having a mulligan. I know this is a point that me and TBone just disagree on, and that's totally fair. I understand a lot of you out there agree with the TBone side of things as well. Ohio State loses in the final week of the regular season against Michigan and still gets an opportunity to get into the college football playoff. I thought that was right. And I'm glad that they got that opportunity. And I think in future years, there will be teams like Ohio State that take advantage of that opportunity. Notre Dame, another team that got a mulligan. They ended up having that loss to Northern Illinois. That didn't derail their season, and they just kept plugging away, and they ended up in the national championship game. That wouldn't have been possible under the old format, and I'm glad that it's possible under this new format. It did take a little bit of the value away from that Michigan versus Notre Dame game, or excuse me, Michigan versus Ohio State game. It also took some of the value off of that loss that Notre Dame had earlier in the season, but it places more value on a greater number of overall games. And that, to me, I think was the point of this, and I think they accomplished that goal. I also think this. T-Bone's Illini and all of these way too early top 25 things that are coming out today, They're in the top 12 in almost all of them.
Hell
Now,
yeah.
you can agree or disagree with that setting. But what that's going to do is Illini fans now go into next year with a destination in mind. The destination is not winning the national championship. There is a 0% chance that Illinois next year will win the national championship.
Zero.
There are
Well.
still only probably 8 teams-ish on any given season that will win the national title. I don't think that has really changed from the old format. It's still going to be the same group of teams that's winning it all. What's changed is the number of teams that can now say, we've got a chance to get to that playoff. That's the goal for Illinois. That's the goal for Mizzou. That's the goal for teams like Arizona State or Boise or SMU. This format allows that to be possible for those mid-level college football teams. It wasn't realistic for most of them under the old format. You'll have your occasional TCU that gets in or Cincinnati that gets in. That's
about
pretty much
TCU.
it, though. It almost never happened. Now it'll happen every year. Well, you get at least 1 or 2 of these teams that end up getting into the playoffs. So I think that was a strong statement in favor of it. And like I said, I still think the same 5 to 10 teams will end up winning it. One other thing that I think needs to change. This schedule is too long. They can't end this thing the day after the divisional round. There was 0 buzz for the national championship game yesterday. It's 2 historically prominent programs, Ohio State and Notre Dame, going head-to-head in the national championship game, and there was 0 buzz for it. That's got to change. And the reason why is because of when it was played. Everybody was still reacting to what we saw from the weekend in the NFL's divisional round. And you've got, Ohio State and Notre Dame, where fans of the teams obviously care, but nationally it lost all sense of purpose yesterday. So they need to bump things up a week at least. Other than that, though, I liked the format. I thought it was a success overall.
Yeah, I did too. And I agree with going too late into the season. It's not that I forgot that the game was playing, but it just didn't have the same excitement as national championships of the past where you were building up to it for the entire week. And I don't know how you go about that. Eliminate a week, do something like that.
Do it after the wild card round even. Because the wild card round in the NFL doesn't carry the same amount of buzz as the divisional round.
Yeah, well, especially after this year's wild card round, you have to be looking at being like,
only get one good game out of it.
and that one good game.
And that's typically how it goes.
Yeah, but you have to fix that because I like the hype for a college football championship, and it was just like, oh shoot, it's on. And you turn it on, you don't get the luster with it.
I would have to look into how they could schedule this, but playing it like the Thursday before the wild card round could be an interesting way to go about it. Because then you could have it lead into the NFL playoffs, and instead of it coming off of the reaction of the playoff, you become almost like a prelude to what the NFL's postseason is going to be. Again, I don't know how that scheduling-wise would work out, but you don't want to do it on a Friday because then you lose all buzz about it coming off of the game. You don't really necessarily want to do it on the Monday coming off of those games. A Thursday or a Tuesday is probably the best way to go about this.
Wednesday would be better because the Blues are probably playing the Utah Hockey Club on Thursday.
With Alex and TBone, I'm BK. In 15
Priorities.
minutes, Jeremy Rutherford joins the show. Questions and answers coming up next.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings as the NFL playoffs are here, and you can play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Looking at the Chiefs game this weekend against the Bills, I like Kelsey more than 69.5 receiving yards, Allen for more than half a touchdown, and Kareem Hunt for more than 33.5 rush yards. $10 on that, and I can win 40+. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my promo code 101WXOS. That's promo code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18+. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus award is non-drawable. Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Three one four 9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. You can ask them on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. Jeremy Rutherford joining us in about 10 minutes. From the 636, guys, do you think that the reason the college football playoff national championship game had no buzz was because of the timing, or is it the 12-team format where more games get to the point where it is actually watered down as a product? I think it was the timing. I could be wrong on this. Maybe we get 3 years in and we're like, hey, man, this just doesn't matter anymore. There's just too many of these games to be able to follow. I don't think that's going to be the case. Like, I don't feel that way in the NFL's playoffs. I don't even feel that way in baseball's postseason. It matters still. So if we're feeling that way about 7-game series, I think college football is going to be fine. I think it was a matter of the timing. I think it was just the worst case scenario for them.
That's what mine was. It's like there was no discussion about it, and frankly, a little of it could have been like when it fell, because like Monday being a holiday for some people, it's like you forget what day it is, and it's like, oh shoot, the college football championship game is on. It just, it felt like you had your fix of great football games, and then you're like, oh, shoot, there's a national championship game, to where you play a week earlier after those wild cards, and it's like, oh, good, more football. That's just kind of the difference of a week.
Yeah, I don't think football loses its luster even as the playoff goes on. I think it was all when it was scheduled. You know, you can't have it on a Monday following the divisional round of the NFL, because that's the best round in the playoffs. You get 4 really good games in the NFL compared to like championship work, you just get 2. I think that's what happened.
From the 636, do you guys think that anybody within the Cardinals organization actually cares about the apathy that they've created within the fan base? I think the front office, like the ownership, cares because it leads to a drop in revenue. That's where I think it matters to them. Other than that, I mean, what makes the Cardinals special is the fan engagement. That's what makes them unique. From every other team in Major League Baseball, it's the only city, in my opinion, in all of America where baseball is the #1 topic in town. I can't think of another market where that's the case, and where baseball is a topic 365 days a year. So I think they care about that. I think they want to continue that. The degree to which, I don't know, but I do think it matters to them mostly because, you know, matters to their bottom line.
Yeah, I think they're trying to make it sound like it matters to them. I don't think it matters to them. I think what matters to them right now is making sure that they are putting enough funds in their pocket for what they're expecting over these next couple of years. And they're trying to make it sound like there's a lot more care that goes into it, because they're trying to make more fan engagement for Busch Stadium this year, which I would imagine is going to be easy.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think it is, kind of care, but the wallet always going to pull in some dough. So I kind of agree with Alex.
All right, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line from the 618. Do you guys think that the expectations for the Bears this year will be playoff or bust under Ben Johnson? We have not mentioned this yet. We will talk about it a little bit more in the 1 o'clock hour, but Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator, thought he had a little bit of a rough game over the weekend, but whatever. He was the top candidate on the market, not named Mike Vrabel. We had talked a lot, Alex, about, hey, is he going to the Raiders? Is he going to the Bears? Could he consider the Jaguars? He decided to go with the Chicago Bears. That was where he ultimately landed. Makes sense to me. You got a quarterback. You have a division that at least is winnable, more so certainly than the Raiders. What do you think the expectations will be for him in year 1 with Chicago?
I think if you're asking a Chicago Bears fan, it's playoffs or bust, because Ben Johnson is the next best thing since sliced bread for them for how bad it's been. I mean, I'm looking at the NFC right now, and I think I could argue about 7 teams that are better than them as it stands until I see Ben Johnson as a head coach. I mean, I think the Lions are better. I think the Packers are better. I think the Rams are better. I think the Eagles. I think the Commanders. And frankly, depending on who the Cowboys hire, I think they might be better. So on paper, it's going to be like, are you kidding me, with Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze and DJ Moore and Ben Johnson? Like, why wouldn't this team be a top 5 team in the NFL? I think my expectations are going to be, let's see if you can get to 9 wins before I start talking playoffs or bust.
Yeah, I think it's playoff or bust for him, because I think he's got the roster, he's got the quarterback, he seems to be making good hires with the staff around him. I mean, he's already been connected to Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator, which
a good hire.
He's not a good head coach, but he's a great defensive coordinator. And he's been connected to the Saints interim coach to be a special teams coach if he doesn't end up getting a head coaching job. So all the cards are there for, hey, this should be a playoff team, and you should be able to get Caleb Williams to the next step in year 2. So I think it is playoff or bust for the Bears.
I do think that they will have playoff aspirations. Playoff or bust seems a little bit high for me. This was not a team that was ready to go this year in that regard. I think a lot of people, us included, talked about them potentially being a playoff team. They just felt a little further away than maybe I expected them to be. I do find it interesting that he's connected to so many of those New Orleans Saints coaches. I'd be curious to see what specifically is the connection there.
You think they're going to trade Caleb Williams for Derek Carr?
No.
Yeah.
That's how you win.
I'm going to be really curious to see what his staff looks like, because he'll probably take somebody from Detroit, but what does the rest of his staff look like? For first-time head coaches, that can be one of the hardest things. They just don't have as many connections across the league. He was a guy that was in Miami for a number of years, and they had a really good staff down there. Be curious to see what else he is connected to.
And let's also see if, before we say playoff or bust, let's see if the Bears can fix their offensive line that's abysmal and then fix their running game. Like, that's what Ben Johnson had that was great in Detroit. On top of the wide receiver talent, he had Jameer Gibbs in one of the best offensive lines in the NFL.
He's Alex, that's TBone. I'm BK. In 15 minutes, we'll play a game of Bet It or Forget It. But coming up next, we're going to talk to Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic, get his thoughts on why this team seems to be so inconsistent with its play. We'll ask JR that next here on 101 ESPN.
Rofiev in on Binnington, right down the middle, weaves it into the slot. Deekson. Oh! Saved by the right leg of Binnington. He grabs the puck with a glove, throws it up to the blue line, and bring out the Zamboni. They hold on, they win. 5-4 the final, and the St. Louis Blues get the 2 big points in Vegas tonight.
That's what it sounded like last night here on your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN with Alex and TBone. I'm BK. Jeremy Rutherford joining us coming up in about 10 minutes. Alex, the Blues are inconsistent, but when they look good, damn, do they look good. For most of that game last night, they were just the better team on the ice. And then down the stretch, one thing leads to another. Vegas is really good. They have a lot of talented players.
Bob's
They're 6-on-5, and they scored a couple of goals, forced the overtime, and then eventually the shootout. But Blues get 2 points, and that's ultimately what mattered, right? But the Utah game happened, and we can't just ignore the fact that it happened. It happened. It was ugly. Nobody enjoyed watching it. The top line was broken apart because of it. And once again, the Blues failed to win 3 consecutive games, something they still have yet to accomplish during this regular season.
Only team in the National Hockey League, BK.
Alex, why is this team so damn inconsistent? Why can't they just put together a sustained run? Because they've won 4 of their last 6, but in that, they lost 2-1 against Columbus, and they lost 4-2 at Utah. So what's going on here?
Their best players are inconsistent. And I mean, that's the difference between you and teams like the Colorado Avalanche, teams like the Minnesota Wild, because their best players show up every single night. Even bad games for them are okay games compared to what the Blues' top players have been. Like, I mean, first of all, Winnipeg lost to Utah last night, 5-2, and their coach came out and said that was about as much a horse bleep as I've seen from this team. So it goes to show you everybody has these types of games. But it was very evident in that Utah Hockey Club game that Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich were going to be a liability. I mean, they were on the ice for the 3 goals that were scored against. Jim Montgomery didn't like it so much that he basically said, nope, you 3 can't play for the rest of this period. And then he broke all 3 of them up that carried over into the Vegas game. But it's not just them. When I say your best players are inconsistent, Jordan Binnington, Joel Hofer, when there's been games that you needed to clinch, they didn't make the saves for you. Defensively, when you've had guys like Colton Parayko or Cam Fowler or Justin Falk out on the ice, a lot of the time they've been great. But then there's games where you need them to be consistent or at least okay. They're bad. And that's just, to me, that's a 500 team to where you get some really good performances, but it's hard to put the streak together. And to me, that Utah Hockey Club game was a little concerning because it was Pavel Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. Like, Robert Thomas, I give him a little bit of a benefit because in December, he was literally top 3 of the best players in the National Hockey League. But you've seen a completely different Pavel Buchnevich from the first 10, 12 games that Jim Montgomery was here to the last 10 games. He was a plus 12 with 10 points in 13 games for Jim Montgomery when he took over. In the last 10 games, he's sitting at a minus 7. In the last 3 games that the Blues played to where they lost, Utah, Columbus, and Minnesota, they had an opportunity to go for a 3-game win streak, and Utah, they had an opportunity to go for a 3-game win streak. He's a minus 7 in those 3 games. Like, when your top guys are being benched or minus 3s on the ice, or as we saw in that Utah Hockey Club game, just poking the stick out in the middle of the ice and hoping that breaks up a play, you're going to lose those hockey games. And that's where I think the frustration really set in for Jim Montgomery. He realized his best players weren't playing.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Buch. You guys know I'm his biggest fan. Like, I think Pavel Buchnevich is a really good hockey player, and at his best, I think he's an excellent defensive forward and a guy that can put up close to a point per game type of production. But he's not at his best this year.
Yeah.
And in the past, I've been able to say, well, it's the injuries or it's this or that. And maybe the injuries are taking their toll and he just doesn't look like the same guy because of that. But it's also, hey, man, maybe he's more of a 60-point producer. And if you're a 60-point producer while also taking a bit of a step back defensively, that contract doesn't look like the same value that I expected it to be whenever they signed it, especially considering he's about to be 30 years old.
Yep.
And things typically don't get better after your age 30 birthday as a hockey player. So I'm not like sounding the alarms or anything, but I do think it's worth monitoring that this is a guy that was effectively benched in a really big game for the team, and now he's been demoted further down into the lineup to the point where Brandon Saad is getting an opportunity ahead of him, and Jake Neighbors is getting an opportunity ahead of him with Robert Thomas. Maybe this is the reset that they all needed. I don't know. It is strange to see, though, because he has been such a consistent player for the Blues, and that hasn't been the case this year. Between him and the goaltending, I think that's where my biggest inconsistencies lie for the Blues right now.
And I mean, I think the Pavel Buchnevich is a more glaring one for this team. Like $8 million for the next 6 years. I understand it sounds like a steal compared to what most guys are getting, but like we can justify Robert Thomas because he's a potential 100-point player. And when he's at his best, I mean, he legitimately is one of the best players in the game. Jordan Kyrou, for $8 million, he's showcasing it right now, has the ability to score 35 or 40 goals. Pavel Buchnevich's thing, when he's at his best, is being one of the best two-way players in the National Hockey League. And your defense has significantly dipped over these last 3 years. You went from, and I know plus minus isn't everything, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's what I'm going to go off of after right here at even strength, a plus 29, a plus 14, a plus 3, and a plus 1. Like, that's not screaming defensively. And if you're not defensive, well, where's the offense? So you got 11 goals in 46 games. That's on pace for about 21 goals this season. That's where it's like, boy, if this is the guy that they're going to have, you're going to have to be replacing that with young talent, which we were saying for a while with Jordan Kyrou. I don't think Pavel Buchnevich has fallen off a cliff. I think Jim Montgomery is going to figure it out because Montgomery loves him. But it's problematic right now because the last 3 games that were big games, he's a -7, and that's concerning.
I think he's one of their biggest issues right now. The team, though, overall, like, they're playing decent hockey. I don't want to get lost in one game, one performance against Utah. Now, again, we go back to this is something that you're going to have to do eventually. You've got to start going on a run. You can't just pick up a couple points here, a couple points there, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Eventually, you have to win, 6 out of 7. 8 out of 10, something like that. Beating Vegas is huge. That is a really good team, and you have shown now the ability to beat the teams that you're directly competing with for the wild card spot and the ability to beat teams like Vegas on the road. It's a big thing. And it ain't going to get any easier, dude, because coming up, Vegas, Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado, Utah, Edmonton, and then, just for good measure, Florida. That's your schedule, and then you have one more going into the break against Chicago, and that could be last year's Columbus game.
Yeah.
Because you've got all this runway of really good teams that you're competing directly with, and then it's like, all right, we made it through. Let our hair down a little bit. Kick our feet up. We'll go up against Chicago. I'm fascinated to see how this team is able to finish going into that break this time.
You just won 6 out of 10 games that ended yesterday going from the Winter Classic till now. I looked at it last night. If you need to be a 6 out of 10 team for the rest of the season with 34 games left, you need to be 6 out of 10 for basically the rest of the season. That puts you at 92 points.
The nice thing for them, the rest of the Western Conference wildcard teams are also very middling. Well, you look at where you're at, and yes, you have a few extra games, but at least from a pure points perspective, Calgary's at 51, Vancouver 50, U 50, Utah 47, and then if you want to include them, Seattle's at 45. Yep. You're right there. Yep. All these teams are basically the same. So it becomes a sprint to the finish of who's going to be able to finish the best.
Yeah. Well, and to the Blues' credit, and this was the question that I remember asking Eddie Olczyk back at the Winter Classic, like what's setting the Blues apart from these Western Conference teams? He said, if you want to be a playoff team, you have to limit the damage that your team has against themselves. And to this team's credit, since Jim Montgomery took over, they've had one losing streak more than 2 games. They'll lose a game, and then they'll get right back on the horse and they win. Now, is it frustrating when they only win 2? Yes, but after the last 10, they've won 2, lose a game. 1, 2, lose a game. Is it pretty? Absolutely not.
If you continue that, you win 2 out of every 3. That's how you rack up 67% of the points.
Yep.
It's just not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy way to go about it because eventually you are going to have a losing streak. You're going to have you lose 4 in a row. Like even the best teams in the NHL will have that kind of a stretch.
Vegas is in it right now.
The Blues are going to have that eventually, and it's going through that streak, or you get 4 or 5 straight. That allows for that to be possible. All right, he's Alex's TBone on BK. Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider, joins us next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends over at Circa Sports in Illinois. Alex, we had a nice winning bet over the weekend with the Commanders money line, the over in that game, and then we ended up having another one hit with the Bills on Sunday. Nice payout over there on the Circa Sports app, and we're trying to do the same for championship weekend with the Commanders over. We're also going to take the Commanders +6 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I like the under in the Chiefs versus the Bills game. I actually think this is going to be a ball control offense type of a game, a lot of really long drives, only like 8 possessions for each team. So I'll take the under there. You add it all up, $10 bet wins you $60 on the Circa Sports app. If you made the exact same bet over on FanDuel, you only win 50. You win more when you bet with Circa.
I like it, BK, but you know me. Add 5 more legs onto that parlay because Circa Sports is not limiting you based off of your winnings, which means when you hit that 15-leg parlay, you're bringing in the most money possible. It's why you need to do all of your betting on Circa Sports Illinois. They're so confident in their material that they tell you to go check out those other betting apps like BK mentioned. You'll always come back to Circa Sports Illinois. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alongside Alex and TBone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend and the Blues insider for The Athletic. He is Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on the show, as he does each and every Tuesday. Jer, we appreciate the time as always, man. Can you explain the Blues inconsistencies for us?
I cannot. I've been trying to do this not only this season, but in seasons past too. And just when I thought in 2018-19, when I could try to explain inconsistencies, they proved everybody wrong. So, no, I'm with you guys. Listen, we'll dig deep into this, I'm sure. But if you say that you're going to Utah and you're going to Vegas and you're going to win one of those games with everything that was on the line and the momentum that was built up after those 2 wins against Calgary to go into Utah, you think you would pull that one out. But they were definitely flat, especially early, and, I thought responded fairly well last night with the win in Vegas.
So, JR, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich, who were benched at the end of that first period. Thomas set aside, I mentioned it earlier, he's been one of the best players in the league since December. But with Pavel Buchnevich, you saw him when he was at his best under Jim Montgomery with an assistant coach. He has declined this season. Does anything stand out to you about his game that has changed?
Yeah, I think maybe just the assertiveness, aggressiveness. I feel like when we watched Pavel Buchnevich under Jim Montgomery a couple years ago when he had that great offensive season, he was just more noticeable. We saw a play with Buchnevich a couple weeks ago. You guys probably remember it, where he went to the net, kind of sliced through the net, through the crease area, and it produced. And it's like, wow, you just don't see that often with Pavel Buchnevich. And I think earlier this season, we could chalk that up to he's playing center, he's playing out of position, so on and so forth. But it's been a pretty good run lately on the wing, right? And playing with guys like Robert Thomas. And so for him to kind of struggle offensively, and yes, the points have been there some nights, especially early on when Jim Montgomery took over, but not as consistent as they need him to be. And I agree with you guys that for somebody who signed up for the next 6 years at $8 million, they need him to be more noticeable.
JR, when you look at what this Blues team is getting right now out of what is now their top line with Holloway, Shin, and Kyrou, what, in your opinion, has allowed for that trio to click together?
Yeah, it's funny. We often list the lines, right, and in order: top line, second line, third line. And I remember a player several years ago, I guess we won't name the player, but he came up to me during a practice. Hey, how come you always list us as the second line and not the first line? And so, some people might not think that matters, but to some people it does. And I think everybody who's been watching the Blues lately can say that Shen line has been the top line. What has led to their success? I think you just chalk it up to you put three players together who are working hard and want the same thing, and different aspects of their game, different elements come together and complement each other well. And once you start to taste that success, which they did early on when they were put together, it just breeds more success. So I think you got the work habits of a Dylan Holloway. I think you got a Braden Shen who really, maybe hasn't been consistent offensively, but is always giving it his best effort. And when he does get on a bit of a roll, like we've seen him at times, a nice goal last night, he can be effective. And then you have Jordan Kyrou who can skate like the wind. So I think that's what's led them to be successful. But I think it's just a chemistry thing when you put guys together.
So since we're talking chemistry, JR, if Pavel Buchnevich does decline a little bit, and seemingly that's the guy that they love pairing with Robert Thomas, what does that line need for Robert Thomas to kind of hit his ceiling?
Well, okay, so the way I'll break it down is this. I think that Pavel Buchnevich is still going to continue to be a good player. Whether he finds it in a week or he finds it in a month, he's going to be a good player. I'm not worried yet, about this contract and him declining. In terms of his role on this team, there is no other choice, guys. He has to be a top-line player or at least a top six player for this franchise to be successful. I'm sure is $8 million. It's not the 14, 15 million that some players are going to start getting soon with this new cap, but it's still a good chunk of change for this Blues club. He's got to produce. And he's likely got to produce with Robert Thomas, and they've had success together in the past. So, I don't know in 2 weeks whether we'll be talking about those two being the best combo on the Blues and their line really clicking. These things are cyclical, but I just know that has to happen for this team to be successful.
Jeremy Rutherford is our guest for just another few minutes here on 101 ESPN. You can find his great work over on The Athletic. You can also follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. JR, when you look at the Blues and what they have been able to do, they just went through a really important stretch for them. A couple of wins against Calgary. Those they felt like legitimate must-wins at the time. And then the win last night against Vegas. What's coming up is a stretch of games against legit Western Conference contenders, not just for the wild card, but at the top of their division: Vegas, Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado, Edmonton as well. What are we going to learn from the Blues in these next 6 or so games against Western Conference contenders prior to this break?
Well, evidently, if they play the way they did last night against Vegas, they're going to play better against these higher caliber teams. I know Vegas has been scuffling a little bit lately, and the goaltending for them wasn't great last night. But over time, even this core group of Blues players, we've seen them play better, rise to the occasion against these types of teams. So hopefully for their sake, they see that trend continue. But here's the thing. You're not going to get into the playoffs unless you can beat these teams, like we saw Saturday with Utah. You have to. You just have to. So you can't come out, have two pivotal games against Calgary, win a tight one like we saw. Kudos on a tight win. Now, even though they didn't play great, you eke out a 2-1 win, and then come out just like barnbusters the next night and play Calgary. If you're going to put together a string of wins, which is what the Blues have to do to be able to be a playoff team, it's going to take more than a nice win against Vegas. I mean, you're going to need 5-6 wins minimum at some point in this season to put yourself in that spot for the wild card. And it's going to take wins like the Utah win. So you look at this next stretch of games like you talked about, Vegas again, Dallas, Vancouver, Colorado. It's a tough stretch. And, if they can somehow come out of this remaining games before the Four Nations tournament with a record that's not just 500, not just a game above 500, but against these quality teams, a couple games above 500, I think you can feel pretty good about coming out the other side. But you're right, this is going to be a gauntlet, and that's why That's why, back-to-back losses to Columbus and the loss to Utah and giving up a 6-4 lead to Minnesota kind of were so, you looked at the situation and said, how does that happen?
Jerry, is that the breaking point in your opinion for Doug Armstrong when he looks at this team? Is that Four Nations tournament, depending on what the record looks like?
Yeah, I think so. Like when I think about what Doug Armstrong's thinking about, my first thought is make the playoffs. So he's going to do everything he can, think with a level head about whether this team can make the playoffs. Like I really think they'd have to fall off and be 6 or 7 points back of the wild card spot, come close to the trade deadline before he would, I don't want to say wave the white flag, but just think, okay, you know what, I don't think this team is going to make it. As much as I want to get there, they're not going to make it. But yeah, so the Four Nations is going to be a good point to stop and look at what's going on and see where they're at, see how they played against these good teams coming up. And then you're going to have a few games after that before you get to the trade deadline. I'm going to stick to what I just said a second ago. If they're close, I think he's going to do whatever he can to get in the playoffs. But we've known Doug over the years to be very realistic about the situation, and usually he's on par in that area.
Jeremy Rutherford's work is all over at The Athletic. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. You can also hear him on the Last Minute Blues podcast regularly with Alex Ferrario as well. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out wherever you find your podcast or over on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll talk with you again next week.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
See you, JR.
That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. If you missed any of our conversation with him, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. After the show today, podcast is presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
101 ESPN app, where you can find that, is always presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. It is super easy to use, and it is free to enjoy, so check that out today if you have not done so already. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We're going to play a game of Bet It or Forget It here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londahl Chevrolet and Johnny Londahl Autoplex. Blues beat the Vegas Golden Knights in a shootout last night. They'll be back in action on Thursday when Vegas comes here to St. Louis. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Carver for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londahl Chevrolet and Johnny Londahl Autoplex. See them at lineup.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service tax line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this one. Bet it or forget it. This was the Detroit Lions' best chance to win a Super Bowl, and they will end up moving on from Jared Goff prior to reaching a Super Bowl with this iteration of the team.
I'm going to forget it. I'm going to continue to invest belief that Dan Campbell is a really smart head coach. They've got all of their weapons for them this upcoming year, and they had a ton of injuries. So health assuming, I think they could be back in the same spot with an opportunity for success next year. So I'm going to forget this.
I'm going to bet it. I think this was their best shot. Now, they got a lot of the roster coming back, but it's going to be tough to replace both Aaron Glenn, who sounds like probably might get the Jets job, and Ben Johnson, who left for the Bears job. Those are two significant hires. We saw that Nick Sirianni struggled with replacing his two top coordinators when they left after, I think it was Sirianni's first year. And Goff, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's never a guy that will get take a roster to the next level and get them to win a Super Bowl. He needs the surrounding cast to carry him to that, and I just don't think that they're going to get any better from here. So I'm going to bet it.
I think you see his limitations in the postseason.
Yeah.
You see when teams are able, and this is something I don't think gets enough credence, and it goes into the Lamar Jackson conversation as well. When teams are able to laser focus on one team, game planning wise, it's a little different than what you do during the regular season. And in the postseason, we've seen this before. We'll see it again. There are things defenses can do to make Jared Goff struggle, especially when he faces pressure. When you get him off of his launch point, he is not a guy that wants to get into scramble mode. That's just not where he succeeds. He's the antithesis of like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, or honestly Lamar in that regard. He's a guy that wins from the pocket. And when he's uncomfortable, man, he just starts getting rid of the ball quick. It's like late career Tom Brady, where he just does not want to get hit, or Aaron Rodgers, honestly, in that regard. But he'll throw it to the opposition a lot. So I'm going to bet this one. I think this was their best chance, man. Losing Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn is a huge deal. I don't know that it was ever going to be easy to be able to win in the postseason with Jared Goff as your quarterback. They've got a lot of talent coming back from the injuries, but I think this was their best chance, man. So I'm going to bet this one. Alex?
Guys, bet it or forget it. By the end of the season, the Blues power play will be top half of the league.
Forget it. They just don't have the personnel.
I don't know if you guys have seen this. Since January 1st, they've got the 6th best power play in the National Hockey League.
It's very good.
Short sample size, mind you. It's only 9 games, but here are the teams that are better than them. Columbus, Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, Detroit. Clipping at 31.6% right now.
It's very good.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut. I agree
For
with
9
BK.
games?
Yeah, well,
You're a nut.
Found a great nut tree. I will see. I will say, forget it. I don't think they'll finish top half. I agree with what BK said. I just don't think they've got the personnel to do this. But it is interesting that that's the case, because remember, that's right around the same time period where they decided to split up the power plays. Which I remember at the time going, what? What are we doing splitting up the power play
actually
units?
Worked.
Yeah. Hey, shout out Steve Ott. I think he was the one who came up with that.
He did. Everybody keeps whining about Steve Ott.
TBone, what do you got?
Guys, bet it or forget it. Nolan Gorman was one of the guys that was talked a lot about at Winter Warm-Up. We didn't hear from him, but he was talked a lot about at Winter Warm-Up. Almost kind of gives me vibes of best shape of his life. Bet it or forget it, Nolan Gorman will get back to 2023 form this season.
He's going to hit 40 home
27
runs?
homers, like
27
pace of 35.
homers in 119 games, 236, 328, 478 slash line, 16% above league average.
Bet it. I don't think he's going to be a star. I think he can be a really solid contributor, though. It's not as if he had a terrible decline in the actual hitting of the ball, contact. His problem was when he made contact, he just wasn't very good at it this year. The power numbers were what really declined for Nolan Gorman this season. He didn't hit the ball with any kind of authority. So he's got to get better with his swing decisions. When he makes contact with the ball, he's got to do damage. And I think you'll see a little bit more of that this season. I think he'll be a 230 to 240 hitter for his career. And I think he's a guy that you can count on for 25 to 30 home runs every season. He's a prototypical 6-hole hitter, a nice complementary piece in your lineup. So I'll bet it.
I'm going to forget this one. I won't invest the stock yet off of a winter warm-up and everybody talking about how great the hitting coach is and what he's going to develop into them. I'll wait a little bit before I get there.
Yeah, I will forget it too. I think he'll have a better season, but I don't know if he's getting back to 2023 form. He's just got too much swing and miss in his game for me to where I just don't know if he'll get back there.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Bet It or Forget It. Let's start out with this one from the 314. Bet It or Forget It, college football needs a salary cap. They have one, so I'll forget that.
Bet it.
Bet it.
Let's go to the next one from the same person.
Too.
Bet it or forget it. Major League Baseball needs a salary cap.
But let's keep
that
going.
One I will bet.
Yeah, well, that's I'm definitely going to bet. Let's keep going. NHL needs a salary cap.
Wait.
Yeah, I'll bet it with baseball. I've been wanting a salary cap for like 10 years now at this point.
It's getting absurd what the Dodgers are doing. Like,
I don't know how, but I see Pete Alonso in their future. I don't know how.
How other players can look at that and be like, yeah, this is fun. Because the players are the one that don't want a salary cap. Why is this fun for you?
So money. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, but if the Dodgers want you for everybody else, it's like, meh.
The Dodgers want you, and so you go there and you get paid. Like, this is the thing is typically you have to make a choice between getting paid and winning. That's always been the choice in sports where you've got any kind of a cap. In previous iterations of baseball, even though there wasn't a cap in place, a lot of teams treated the luxury tax as a cap that was in place. Well, the Dodgers aren't doing that. The New York Mets are not doing that. So when you have teams that are just not only seeing where the luxury tax is, but blowing through it, it totally alters the way that these things go. So you've got the Mets spending $290 million. The Phillies at $288 right now. The Yankees at $285. And the Dodgers at $310 million. Jeez. And I think that's before the Kirby Yates number comes in.
That's not fun.
It's like the San Diego Padres are 8th in Major League Baseball in spending. The Dodgers have spent $100 million more. They have a 50% increase in payroll over what the Padres are. So, yeah, I think there needs to be a salary cap. I think it needs to come with a salary floor. Like, hey, Pirates, you can't spend $81 million on your team next year.
What?
Are they the lowest in baseball?
No, they are not. The Marlins right now are the lowest. What do you think the Marlins are spending?
All right, so like
75.
I think their highest paid player on their roster is Alcantara, so he'll be dealt at the deadline.
Ooh, I'll take him.
There's 40 million. So,
they have one player making more than $5 million.
That's Alcantara, isn't it?
Sandy Alcantara. He's making 17.
I'll go. It's like 45 million.
It's 67. So we don't have an A's from last year where I think they were at like 50, 55, something like that.
It's close.
They're doing it right. They're rebuilding through the draft and develop.
Baseball needs a salary cap. Players won't do it, but they need one.
They need one.
I agree.
All
Make baseball fun again, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Will we feel differently if the Dodgers lose in like the DS this year?
No.
Because we're all on the same page there, because I agree.
Yeah, no, free agency's not fun anymore. The top guys are going to go to the Dodgers or the Mets.
Well, and not just that, but the reason that we had our opening segment conversation of like, hey, the Cardinals are pivoting, but are they pivoting and not going to get stars in the future like they've done in years past, isn't because of, well, partly because the Cardinals don't want to adjust to that model, but the whole market is getting inflated because of the top teams, right?
Correct.
Because they can overpay relievers, which then makes all the relievers that are looking at like the Tanner Scott deal going, well, wait. I want a contract close to that. Well, the only teams that are going to give that to you are the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Yankees, and like the top 5. The mid-market teams can't do that, and that's where you get to the spot where you see some of the big free agents, like Flaherty. We'll use him as an example. Flaherty's looking at the deals that Snell just got, or I'm trying to think of another big free agent that signed. But Blake's Burns. He's looking at those contracts going, okay, so those guys are getting like $25 to $30 million a year.
Well,
40 million, sorry. I want 30 million because they're getting 40. I know I'm not the same as those guys, but I'm close. So I'll take $30 million and I'll take like the 5 to 7 years that they're going. And all the big market teams are saying, we don't need any rotation help, sorry. And then he goes, all right, mid-markets, let's do this. We can't afford that. And now you get to where you get that clog in the free agent where everybody doesn't know where to go.
Yeah, it's not a good position for baseball to be in right now. All right, from
Manfred will
the
figure it out.
618, guys, better to forget it. Lamar and Harbaugh will win a Super Bowl together.
Forget it. Harbaugh will be gone before Jackson wins the Super Bowl, if Jackson wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'll forget it. I don't think Harbaugh can win a Super Bowl with Lamar, just because of the turnover issues.
I'm gonna forget it because of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I do think Lamar will start having more success in the postseason. Hearing his post-game comments, it seems like Lamar gets it. He sees what the problem is. Like, he's hearing what all of this stuff is out there, this nonsense that people are putting into the ether of being, Lamar was great. He wasn't the problem. No, Lamar was part of the problem for the Ravens on Sunday. And he seems to be ready and willing to acknowledge that. He knows what has to change. Now it's about implementing that into his game. You saw that with Josh Allen. Josh Allen saw, all right, I'm the problem here. I've got to be better. I cannot put the ball in harm's way. And he has become one of the best quarterbacks in the league at avoiding those plays now. He went from a guy that was just super immature with the way that he played. And I'm not saying that in like a paternalistic guy, but like he was very young. He was very green at the position. And so he put the ball into harm's way to now being the opposite of that. I think Lamar needs to go through that same process, and I think he'll get there. But man, this AFC is tough. Like, this was year one of Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. That team's gonna be better with Justin Herbert. And I know people don't see it right now because of what happened to him in the playoffs too, but that team's gonna be better. I think CJ Stroud is going to get better with the Texans. The Chiefs and the Bills are already there. Joe Burrow ain't going away, dude. The team's gonna be pretty darn good, and they're gonna fix that defense eventually. Getting through this AFC is a gauntlet. This might have been his best chance to do it because the Bills are down right now. The Chiefs, like, this is a good Chiefs team. It ain't a great one. And they weren't able to overcome it. Last year was another opportunity for him. That was not a great Chiefs team. A great Chiefs defense, not a great Chiefs team. And he wasn't able to do it. So, say forget it. Or I'm going to say forget it. But I think he's going to be good. I don't know.
He'd be good in the regular season.
If he was in the NFC, I would say definitely bet this. He would get to a Super Bowl from the NFC. AFC is just tougher.
I thought they said win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think he could get to and potentially win one.
Oh, I get what
But
you're
he's got to beat multiple of these quarterbacks. You can't just beat one of them. You got to beat Mahomes and Allen and Burrow.
Yeah, but if you're a three-time MVP, you should be able to.
Maybe. I think the game just changes in the postseason. I don't have any disrespect towards what Lamar Jackson has done in the regular season. He's deserving of all of these MVP awards. His regular season accomplishments are impossible to ignore. It's what happens in the postseason. And I think not enough people are willing to disconnect those two things and recognize them for being two separate things. It's like James Harden. James Harden was an unbelievable regular season player, dude. And you can't ignore that. He went out there and played like 82 games every year. And the playoffs, he became a different guy because he got worn down. He was just, the playoff games are played differently. And James Harden's style didn't work over the long haul. So I think there are a lot of similarities between those two guys.
The 636 figured it out. Jackson just needs to be like Patrick Mahomes and figure out anytime he gets touched to cry and flop like a you-know-what.
I've seen that work. Yeah.
Yeah, it works. Especially if you get the right officiating crew.
I mean, I do feel for that. You had to play 2-on-1 in that game. Versus the Chiefs.
Can we spend like a minute, maybe two?
Yeah, sorry,
we're out of break. Yeah, you didn't manage time properly like Lamar Jackson.
We got to get to the junk drawer.
Which could be Patrick Mahomes' conversation if you'd like.
Mahomes flopped.
No, I got something else.
Flopped multiple times.
Times affinity.
It wasn't called. There's no flag that came from it. I don't like it. I don't like when guys flop on the football field. I don't enjoy it. I don't like it in soccer. I don't like it in basketball. I don't like it in the NFL. I would prefer Mahomes not to do it. But the way that the rules are written, most quarterbacks probably should do this.
There it is.
But
following the
rules. I don't like it.
Sure.
The calls were correct. He got hit in the helmet twice in the game.
No.
Now
they hit each other.
I get why people get annoyed by the Chiefs. I felt the same way when the Patriots were getting these calls, dude. So, like, I totally understand it, and I can't sit up here and tell you not to feel that way. I get it. It's super frustrating. And the Texans leaving that game and saying, like, hey, we knew it was us against the refs today. Yeah. Totally get that, too. I think it's a loser's mentality, but I get it. I used to feel that way about the Chiefs going to Foxborough. You felt like you were playing against the refs, and you felt like the headset was going to go out 7 different times when you were playing up there. Like, everything that the Patriots could do to win a game, they were going to do it. And then they got caught with it, like, 5 different times. So, like, I totally get why people feel this way about the Chiefs. That being said, if we're being objective about all of this, the worst officiated game over the weekend was the Bills versus the Ravens game, and there was no close second. The Bills got a whole hell of a lot of help by the refs over the weekend.
Sounds like somebody deflecting the flopping that's taking place by their star
more
player.
Tone again.
No.
Tone Ranger's been
Lamar
rolling
got
out here on
hit
Tuesday.
like 5 yards out of bounds, and there was no call on it, and it was wild.
Let's just make sure that
offensive pass interference, I can't remember. I think it was Keon Coleman who's going down the left sideline, and it set up the Bills to go score the potential game-winning touchdown, I believe it was at the time. He threw the defender to the ground, and it was called defensive pass interference. That was wild.
Let's just remember your initial comment when Patrick Mahomes flops in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left and they beat the Bills because of the officials.
Yeah,
and I'll blame them.
I don't like when he flops.
He won't be here on Monday, so I can really lose my mind.
Oh, yeah, we'll lose it on that one.
Yeah, I'll be gone.
Yeah, for the entire week. So we'll have a whole week bashing Patrick Mahomes and his flopping. Can't wait.
What did you guys think about the officiating over the weekend?
I hate when they're team Chiefs.
Yeah,
You know?
I do too.
If Mahomes wants to flop like that, man, why don't he come play
Hey,
for
these
City?
things are off. What did you guys think about the officiating over the weekend?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely Mahomes' pocket.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in Mahomes' pocket.
Cool.
Yeah, that roughing the passer where the two Texans guys hit each other. Yeah, cool. Even Troy Aikman didn't like it.
They won by 11 points, man. I know it was a 9-point game. They ran out of the back of the end zone on the last play.
Yeah, seriously. I blame the officials.
All I know is you've been cheating since you won in overtime against the Bills.
How can you get any momentum when the officials will always
That's a
ruin
good
it?
point.
You don't have two championships
You
if not
can't-
for the
you-
cheating that takes
They
place.
even called the Jawan Taylor stuff this week. Like, they got him. They got a phantom holding call in there. I mean,
I call it the Taylor Swift effect.
if they are in the pocket of the Chiefs need to spend a little more money to avoid some of those calls. Because it didn't go the way that it was supposed to this
You can't
weekend.
make it look that up.
And Mahomes, when he flops, he's got to get the call, man. They got to
He
do a
gets the
better
call.
job.
Every time.
They need to pay more to the refs. They need to be more in their pocket. By the way, Cleat this weekend, the ref that's on the game, Chiefs actually have an under 500 record this weekend.
Good.
Oh, hallelujah.
Against-
Somebody's
with this
not in
ref.
his pocketbook yet.
Yeah, this guy must be one of those good officials.
Yeah.
With
The
Alex
ones that
and
actually
TBone on
see the
BK.
game.
Junk Drawer coming up next. All right, with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, you know how we make everything into ice cream these days? Like there's every different kind of ice cream. Chips, same thing.
See, I feel like chips is that.
We've got every possible flavor of chip that you could ask for. We are now getting candy. And this is one I just don't think that anybody had asked for.
Well, I mean, the flavor of black licorice is still rolling around, so I don't think you can get worse than that.
I don't like black licorice, but I'm a big licorice guy.
Oh, huge licorice guy, but there never needs to be a thing of black flavored licorice like in jelly beans or anything like that.
I'm also a fan of like bitter things in general.
Because you're a bitter human being.
Correct, probably.
Bitter heart, I've heard.
True.
Try and be better, not bitter.
Fair enough.
Gotcha.
All right, so
Nice.
Progresso is coming out with a new type of hard candy.
Progresso, like the pasta?
Yeah, like the soup.
Oh, God.
I was gonna say.
They are called
don't want
soup
this.
drops.
Okay.
Soup you can suck on is what they're going after here.
Soup you can't slurp.
Yep. It's pretty disgusting. The
Yeah,
soup
it is.
drops were made available beginning last Thursday at 8 a.m. A short time later, the website had the following message, quote, "We're sold out, but not for long. Check back next Thursday at 8 o'clock.
What?
What? Somebody that works there bought it all and then told people that it was sold out.
The guy that came up with it.
They come in a can that looks like you're
Typical soup.
eating soup. They're $2.49 plus 99 cents for shipping. Is this something you guys...
So like, let me understand. It's like a cough drop, but it's soup
basically,
flavored.
yep.
So like, I can
soup.
get chicken. I can get tomato soup.
Oh.
That's disgusting.
I don't know what it is about this, Alex, but there's something about the texture of
sucking
what I'm
on soup.
anticipating
Yeah.
with soup. And then instead of it being, the slurp, I've got a hard candy in my mouth that I'm getting the same... that does nothing
Here's
for
the thing.
me.
Here's the thing. When you eat soup, it's typically a little spoonful. When I've got a cough drop in my mouth, like I am deciding how much of that liquid I'm going to have to endure. And it's just a lot of chicken noodle soup at one time.
Here's my question. Is it, if I take I don't know, if I suck on 2 of these, is that like a bowl of soup? Like, am I full? Like, can I do this for
I
like
can't
lunch?
imagine.
I can't either,
This
but
is,
like.
this is how you lose weight is what you're asking?
No, I'm just like.
It's not like a smoothie. It's a hard candy.
Yeah, but I can see like if I only need to eat like 3 of these and then my lunch is done. Talk about saving time. I'm
I
all
think
about
that's
time.
Ozempic. That's different.
I'm all about time efficiency.
Whatever happened to just the good old butterscotch candies? Like why do we gotta make chicken noodle soup candies?
I would try this. I would try
I
this.
do wonder, like,
I don't think it
what's
would be
the
good.
target demo for this?
Old people.
You think?
Is it?
Old people that don't
60
want
plus?
yeah 60 plus that just forgot that they needed to eat dinner at 5:30 and they said I'll just have a soup drop.
Hey, man. Good for them, I
Time
suppose.
efficient.
God.
Coming up in 15
That's
minutes, we're going to
disgusting.
dive into some more NFL quick hitters coming off of a big weekend in the divisional round as we get set for the championship weekend. Champ Bash coming up next Sunday. Join the Fast Lane and the Riz Show from Hot Shots in Fenton for the Champ Bash. You guys said that you're going to be out there on Sunday as well?
I will
Yes,
be
sir.
out
You're
there.
gonna be hanging out? All right. So their live pregame show with Stalter and Riz will start at 11 o'clock. Get there early. Go enjoy that pregame show. Enjoy some food over there as well. Plenty of screens. You'll be able to watch the AFC and NFC championship games. Plus, the Riz Show's got their choreographed dance pick'em punishment at halftime of Game 1. So be sure to get out there. Champ Bash with the Fast Lane and the Riz Show and Alex Ferrario, Tanner Hendrickson, Hot Shots in Fenton this Sunday. All details can be found at 101ESPN.com. In 15 minutes, we'll get into NFL quick hitters. But next, it took Sonny Gray exactly 1 year to learn what the Cardinals have been ignoring for the past 8. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
I had a conversation with my brother-in-law the other day because of how cold it's been outside. He was talking about his old HVAC system, and he mentioned that it's like 27 years old, and the company that they're using were the people that took care of the home previously, and they just kept going with it. But he was complaining about how he's had them out a couple of times, and it's the same issue that keeps going on with their heating system. And I told him, I said, call Classic Air Care. I promise you they will figure it out. Well, he did. They were out there last weekend, and in a matter of 5 minutes, they figured out what the issue was, had it fixed, and now my buddy is completely happy. This is why you need to be using the right company when it comes to something as important as your HVAC system. Be a part of the maintenance agreement. I've been using that since 2016, and whether it's been my 25-year-old unit in our first house or the 26-year-old unit in our current house, they've been able to keep it going for us. So the maintenance agreement, if you're looking for a HVAC system, this is the important part. You can always trust the technicians at Classic Air Care. They're not trying to dupe you with anything. They're giving you their honest assessment on your unit. Give them a call today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, Classic Air Care, or book online, classicaircare.com.
From my understanding is the resetting is correct me if I'm wrong, it's like it's allocating money to maybe not as much as the active big league roster, but throughout the organization as a whole. Then I would say yes. I think that need to do is a where you tell someone what they need to do or this and that, but in my opinion, I think it is something that will be beneficial to the organization as a whole for the next 10 years, yes.
That is what it sounded like over the weekend as Sonny Gray met with the media talking about why he decided to stick with the Cardinals and why he felt this was not only something they could do, but something that they needed to do. Alex, that was a theme among the guys over the weekend. I thought it was hilarious yesterday. Wilson Contreras was up on the stage. He's talking with the media, and he was asked about, hey, the Cardinals are going through this retool. Why'd you stay? He explained all of that, and then he went on to say, my understanding is that the Cardinals are going to do this to reinvest in their minor league system. Yeah, that's something they needed to do. And he just laughed. He said, I'm just being honest. This is something that had to happen. So people inside of the organization can take an honest look about what's going on around them and say, yeah, it's not only time, it's past time for you to do this. I also found it fascinating, Alex. Sonny Gray is a very introspective guy, and he'll give you his honest thoughts about things. And so as he was up on stage, TBone, I think we've got this audio ready to go here in a second. He was up on stage and he was talking about what he saw, why he thinks that the Cardinals kind of needed to go in this retool direction. And he gave a really good explanation in about a minute that sums up, I think, what we've been talking about on the show for, 5 years. It took him one season to learn all of this, what the Cardinals have been probably avoiding for about 8 now.
The way that the game has changed and adapted, and the way that it's if you get caught in as a team, if you get caught in a middle area, if you kind of get caught in the middle, then do you have a direction that you're truly pursuing or that you're truly going after? I guess that is like if you get caught in the middle, what direction are you going? I believe you have to pick a direction, and then you have to wholeheartedly believe in that direction, and you have to go for it. I don't think you can try to go in one direction but also be trying to go in another direction at the same time. I think that's what ultimately leads you in the middle. So I think that probably try to prevent yourself from staying in the middle. You gotta do something you gotta believe in, and you gotta go for it.
Alex, that's it. He said it all in 40 seconds. What the Cardinals have been doing for 7 years now. They got caught in the middle. They keep trying to add a piece, a guy that can potentially help them get to where they want to go. But they're not really committing to it. They're not going to, all right, we think this is a team that can really go win it. No, they've said it out loud. We want to get to 90 wins and then give ourselves a chance once we get to the tournament. And that's a way that teams have won in the tournament before. We've seen that work, right? But the Cardinals always feel another couple of pieces short. And so they just go up to that line and never end up crossing it. And what that gets you, it gets you stuck in the middle. It gets you 82 to 88 wins, and you compete up until the end, but then you get a worse draft pick, and you maybe make it to the playoffs, but do nothing once you get there. It's been the cycle of the Cardinals for pretty close to a decade now. And Sonny Gray summed it up perfectly. It's now time for them to choose another path. Or they could have chosen the same path, but went even more aggressive. Go a Padres route, where it's like, you know what? We're trading our young guys for guys that are proven talent that we think we're going to win right now. Okay, that's a path you could choose, but go for it. Really believe in your conviction of this being the correct way to build. They clearly don't feel that way. They don't want to go down that path. They would rather have more sustained winning. Well, then that requires this kind of a model. And what they're doing this year with the retool, reset, whatever the bleep you want to call it, it's the right move for them right now. And I loved hearing Sonny Gray talked about it. I love hearing Wilson Contreras talk about it over the weekend. They all seem to be in the same mindset of this is the thing that needed to happen. We want to be here for it to happen. And they seem to be saying all of the right things about believing not only can this happen right now, but also they think they can win right now. We'll see on that. But I did find it interesting to hear the players on the team talking about the new direction that they're heading.
Yeah, well, I won't invest any stock into them winning right now, but I mean, they should appoint Sonny Gray to not only the ace of this ball club, but to the assistant of the assistant to the general manager. Like, everything he said is absolutely correct. And why would we think anything different from Sonny Gray? Like, this is a man who has seen the worst and the best of Major League Baseball. Like, think back to his early years with Oakland. Like, that was a team that wasn't stuck in the middle. That was a team that was bottom dwellers probably for a long time. And then you're with the Yankees. And the Yankees, you see the top echelon that's always willing to throw money at their problems. And then you go right into the muddy middle for these last couple of years with Cincinnati and Minnesota. Like, this is a guy who have seen the unsuccessful organizations, the successful organizations. He's pitched against them. He's pitched in them. This is the guy you want if you're the Cardinals to try and kind of lead the parade through this weird middle situation that you're in. And frankly, that was the whole reason they brought Sonny Gray in, right? One, you wanted to fix your ball club and get that top-level pitcher, but it was a guy that John Mozeliak said they had a ton of conversations with about how to fix the pitching development side of things and bring in the right tools that can help this minor league system. So when Wilson Contreras, who was a part of a rebuilding team, when Sonny Gray, who has been a part of a rebuilding team, a middle team, and a successful team, when they're saying this is where the optimism at least should start to not ignite a fire, but like you're starting to see the two sticks rub together. Because when this is a guy who's saying, like, yeah, this is going in the right direction, and frankly, he should have followed it up with, I've seen the bad directions, and hopefully the Cardinals can get this thing righted quickly.
TBone, I want to get your thoughts on this, but we got to push a little bit of pushback from the 314. He said, guys, this is not the case. Signing the wrong players and trading the wrong players is ultimately what gets you to 82 wins, and that's where the Cardinals find themselves. Sure. That's true. Signing the wrong players, trading the wrong guys, that's definitely part of this. Who are the guys that the Cardinals traded that you're like, you know what, if they were here, they would have been a championship contender? You can argue Sandy Alcantara if he was healthy. That's the kind of guy.
Alcantara/Gallen, yeah.
Those are the pitchers that could potentially lead the front end of your rotation. I can agree with that.
I think Randy A maybe to an extent.
He makes you a championship contender.
Yeah.
I think it would have helped you at the time.
Totally disagree.
Yeah, because you need three bats, and they've always been, feels like one bat short.
Well, and you relied on the Tyler O'Neill to be that third bat in the one postseason, and it fell short for you.
Now, I don't know if they had the pitching, so that's where it's tough to decide.
I don't think it makes you a championship
I think
contender,
it would help. I would have
regardless.
significantly helped them.
He would have been a cheaper option for a team that would have had money to spend elsewhere if you have him. So
And
I think it at least would have given you a shot.
In that scenario, you probably don't end up having opportunities for one of Nootbaar or Donovan. Not that that's the worst thing in the world, but you're basically replacing that production one for one. I don't know what ended up happening with that in that scenario with Jordan Walker, but regardless, they're not a championship contending organization because they haven't picked a direction and gone with it. They ended up stuck in the middle because of what their decisions were. They traded for Marcell Ozuna because of an organizational philosophy that I'm not sure works in 2025 or at that point in 2020 or 2018. They ended up trading for Matthew Liberatore because of what they were trying to capture with a left-handed arm as a back end of the rotation starter because of their failures with what they were unable to develop within their own organization. So it's just an organizational instability and a choosing of a path that worked 20 years ago. And they said, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Even though everybody around them was telling you, hey, it kind of broke. And they kept trying to plug away at it. And it just ended up getting them to the exact same results year after year after year. So it was time to do something different. It didn't have to be this, but it had to be something that was different. And I'm glad that they at least got to that point finally.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they've decided, okay, we've got to figure out what we have internally, because that's where I think they missed the mark with Randy A, not knowing what they had internally, and then becoming too shy to do what Alex had mentioned in the first segment, which is, hey, they used to take these guys that they would draft and trade them at their peak so they could go out and get major league ready talent. Well, I think ever since the Randy Rosarena trade, they've become gun shy on that. They've been too afraid to let another Randy A get away and deal with the backlash that's come with that. But I agree with, you've got to pick a direction, and I think the Cardinals never picked the direction of, hey, let's go all in on this. They did half measures where, okay, we'll do the one splash, but then we got to stabilize our floor. And that was the big problem I had with what they did with the rotation last year. Okay, the Sonny Gray signing made sense. Now, granted, it was the last one you did, but it made sense because you need a guy like that to be at the front end of the rotation in the playoffs if you're going to be a playoff team. But you got to have a second guy with him, and you never had a second guy. And instead of going out and paying for a second guy or trading for a second guy, what did they do? They said, well, we got to just stabilize this, make sure the floor doesn't fall out from underneath us. And then they just went in and they gave, I don't even know if I'd call them bad contracts, but a waste of $25 million on the open market to a Lennon and Kyle Gibson when you never really had that high of a ceiling. Mm-hmm. So you had to pick a direction, and now that they've decided to go towards the reset, sure, the floor could really bottom out on this baseball team, especially if none of the young guys end up hitting, but then you get answers, right? And that's the nice thing by picking this direction of going with the reset. You get answers, and you get a new front office taking over next year to try and plot their way forward with a new perspective.
And that's where this whole thing is going to start from. Like, we could talk about what this is going to look like down the road. It's going to start from a change of philosophy and a change of mindset from the front office. Because in the past, it's been you need to be aggressive. And then it's been what TBone just mentioned, where we're throwing money at things that try and solve a short solution until you really solve the bigger issue internally. And it's seemingly, they're saying all the right things of trying to solve the internal problem in terms of that developing of players. But at one point, you can't sit there like you've been doing and just garner all of the assets and say, well, no, you can't have any. You have to be aggressive at some point.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Going back to that text of you signed the wrong players and you traded the wrong players, part of that was a philosophy of who you went out to acquire. They signed the wrong players, not just because they evaluated the player incorrectly, but it was because of the market that they were shopping in. Most of those guys in the market that they shop in don't work. It ends up being a year or two of decent returns, and then after time, you're like, this is a contract that we'd probably rather not have, because you've got warts. When you shop in the market that they do, whether it's the starting pitching market where it's, $10 to $20 million a year is typically the market that they shop in for starters. Man, look at the starters that are in that market. It's guys that are incredibly flawed, either because of injury histories or guys that don't have swing and miss stuff, and that's why they slot into that market, and they are typically back end of the rotation types of guys. Okay, well, there's a lot of risk that comes along with that, and there's very little upside with it. The other market that they shop in is the mid-tier position player guy, typically guys that are a little bit over 30. That market is nice because it's a little cheaper. The reason they're cheaper, though, is because you don't expect them to last very long at their prime age of their careers. You get maybe 2 to 3 years out of it. And a lot of the time, there's some kind of a problem. With Dexter Fowler, he was a center fielder that's not actually a center fielder. He can't play defense in center field, so eventually he's going to have to move to a corner, and his bat didn't necessarily play for a corner outfielder. With Wilson Contreras, he's a catcher that nobody else in Major League Baseball apparently viewed as a catcher. And the Cardinals, after a month, also didn't view him as a catcher any longer. So, yeah, you can go out and make these deals, but they're shopping in the wrong market to begin with. And that is another thing that they're going to have to take a serious look at. They haven't signed anybody this offseason, so I don't know what the future is going to be for that. I hope that they take a look at this and say, all right, when we go to the market, we're either shopping at the bottom with these like bargain bin deals or shopping at the very top. And I still am not entirely convinced that that's going to be where they go. I think this is a draft and develop and then trades. I think that is what the future of the St. Louis Cardinals is going to be. And we'll see if they end up being right on that, or if this philosophy can work in St. Louis. It's going to be interesting to consider. All right, coming up next, Alex TBone did it. He did the thing we all say we don't want to do. He went to winter warmup, heard a guy speak, and said, he's fixed.
Oh, my God.
It's going to work
That's
this time.
cute, T-Bone.
He's going to explain why and who his pick is this season to click based on what he heard them say on a stage at Cardinals winter warmup. T-Bone explains next year on 101 ESPN.
I think I've made changes last season that just weren't for the better. I think that's what it was. I thought, kind of doing that, spraying my stance out a little bit, moving my hands back a little bit will help me kind of stand the ball a little bit longer and help me drive the ball the other way. But I think that's really kind of where I got away from it. And right now it was really just kind of getting back to it with him. I was really good. I mean, first day I met him, came in with video, told me exactly what he saw, and he asked me how I felt. And I thought that was, super special, and definitely someone you can trust and work with. So a very positive, relationship with him for sure.
That was Jordan Walker talking about his early relationship with Brant Brown. If you missed our conversation with Brant Brown, the Cardinals' new hitting coach, we did that, month and a half ago at this point. You can check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
Jordan Walker is T-Bone's pick to click. He went to winter warm-up over the weekend, and Alex, he did what I did a couple of years ago with Dakota Hudson. Now, it didn't go super well for me with Dakota Hudson. That was basically the year he played himself out of the organization, and I believe he's basically signed minor league deals ever since. But he said, hey, what Dusty Blake has done for me as a pitcher is completely changed the way that I view the game of baseball. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really moving. Please tell me more about that. And he went on to have like a 10-minute sermon talking about how his baseball philosophy has shifted since meeting Dusty Blake. T-Bone, I have guardrails up because of that experience, where I fell way too in love with the player and what he was going to be doing that year.
Guardrails, I have steel walls
based on what I heard in one press conference. You typically go into these things with those guardrails up. And so I was surprised to hear you say, I'm buying into Jordan Walker based on what he said over the weekend.
Oh, T-Bone.
What about his comments spoke to you to give you this kind of confidence that he's going to get back on track in 2025?
Well, first off, there is a much higher ceiling to Walker's game than there ever was to Dakota Hudson.
At least Dakota Hudson did it at the major league level.
He did it in 2023, as he made reference to in that
what
cut.
I thought he was going to be able to do was a back-end starter, and he didn't even hit that.
And in 2023, he hit 239, so he didn't really do it in 2023.
The reason that I look at Jordan Walker and hearing those comments, it made me feel confident that he's going to get his game to the next level. One, because it sounds like he's got a good relationship with Brant Brown. And look, you can read into that if you want to. Again, I try not to read too much into that. But the one for me was it sounds like he's admitting that last year was not a good year and the changes he made didn't work. And I think that's the first step, right? To admitting the first step in any recovery or whatever it may be is admitting the mistake and then being able to adjust to it. And we'll see if he does make the correct adjustments. But the fact that he is looking at the film with Brant Brown going, this just didn't work, okay? The changes that I made under Turner Ward, I didn't like them. They didn't work. The organization maybe wanted me to do that more than I did. Or maybe we both agreed that this would work, and it didn't. And now I've gotten back to being more of what had me be successful at the big leagues, which is going back into 2023. He even showed, and I'm sure you saw some of the photos on Twitter over the weekend, even showed where he's doing with his hand positioning and how he's working towards his stride.
Oh, and T-Bone was like hand positioning. I am in.
Hearing him talk about the way... Hearing him, not just him, but the way multiple players spoke about Brant Brown reminded me how multiple players spoke about Dusty Blake. Now, the Hudson one didn't work, but most guys, and we've seen this with Dusty Blake, I think Dusty Blake's a good pitching coach. He's had success over 3 years. Now, there's been times where you look at guys and go, like, why is this not working? And then they end up making adjustments in season and they get them fixed. Thinking about Jordan Hicks when we wanted to cut him in 2023. And they end up getting a good asset for him at the trade deadline. I wonder if Brant Brown's going to have the same success as he did, as Dusty Blake did, and I wonder if he's really going to do it with Jordan Walker.
Well, I hope he has success with them that you're talking about. I mean, here's the thing. I mentioned, I have steel gates up over this. Like, there's a moat around those steel gates with 15 crocodiles in it. I don't trust this. I will agree with T-Bone to one aspect. The first step in this is Jordan Walker admitting that this has not gone well. And I think Jordan Walker was admitting it last year, like saying, like, hey, this isn't working. I'm bad. This needs to get fixed. But the Cardinals are also saying this didn't work. They went out, they got rid of Turner Ward, they brought in Brant Brown, who they believe can fix that. Now, do I think all of a sudden it's going to be, boom, he's a generational player? No, I don't. I think this is going to be some growing pains for Jordan Walker because this guy still, despite the 2023 season that was good, he still hasn't gone through the trials and tribulations of being a pro in the major leagues from start to finish. And that's where I feel like those growing pains come into play. So do I think he's going to be a superstar this year? Absolutely not. Do I think we see strides from Jordan Walker that we did not see last year? I do, because after we spoke to Brant Brown and after hearing him admitting the failure that's taken place over these last couple of years, that's the first step in a young player starting to figure it out.
So I think Jordan Walker also has to take ownership of some of this stuff, and I think that's what made me so optimistic after hearing him over the weekend. I think there have been times in the past, and this is a critique of Jordan Walker, not something that I would I'm not crushing him for it, but I think it's just the reality. I think there comes a certain point in time where you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, how much of this is on me and how much of this is on the coaching that I'm getting? And I think some of what went wrong for Jordan Walker was him. I think he needed to adjust, and I think there were times where he was pretty stubborn about that. And I think he'd probably admit as much. Alec Burleson, he's talked about that in the past, 2 years ago. He was a guy that thought, okay, at every level, I've had success. And my underlying metrics all show that I should be having success at the big league level again, and I'm not changing anything because this is who I am as a hitter. That offseason, he said, you know what, I had to change. I had to look myself in the mirror, and I had to realize, what I'm doing right now isn't working. Why? And he went to the Cardinals coaches and said, explain to me what's going on. And they said, hey, you've got to be more selective. If you keep swinging at everything, yeah, you can make contact with everything, but you're not going to be able to do the damage that you want to at this level if you keep swinging the way that you are. I think Walker has similar tendencies. I think sometimes he thinks he can hit anything and he can hit it for power and he can drive the ball and he can do things the way that he's always done it. And I don't know if that's going to work at the big league level. So my hope is maybe Brant Brown is saying the exact same things that Turner Ward said. And he's just saying them in different ways, or it's a new message, right? Or a new messenger instead of a new message. If it gets through to Walker and now he's changing, and it ends up being for the better, dude, good on everybody involved. Good on Walker, good on Brant Brown, good on the Cardinals for making the change and realizing that it needed to be made this offseason. I'm hopeful. I don't know how optimistic I am, but I'm hopeful that that is what's taking place right now. And Jordan Walker said all of the right things this weekend, so fingers crossed.
And I will say this, not to be like Debbie Downer here, but if he doesn't get it this season, it's not happening. Because this was rock bottom for Jordan Walker. And I understand he's still young and you don't want to write off a prospect, but I mean, after the season that you just went through to where everyone was saying it's not working, you got to go to the minors, you didn't come back to the majors, and then when you did, it was a short time and then you went back down. This was rock bottom. And if you're not willing to do what BK just mentioned and start making those adjustments and taking it to yourself, I don't know if it's going to come to you in this organization.
I do like what you said about Dusty Blake compared to Brant Brown, though, T-Bone, because it feels like there are some similarities there. When Dusty Blake came into the organization, I remember there were a lot of people that are like, oh, this guy's an analytics nerd. He's going to ruin the pitching staff.
From college, of all things.
And then Waino did a really good interview on the morning show at the time, and he talked about how that was his first thought when Dusty Blake came into the organization. He's like, oh, he's a numbers guy. All right, whatever. It's the game. It's the way the game is going. I'll live with it. And Waino said, hey, when I got to know him, and I got to understand where he's coming from, he's so much more than that. He understands the numbers, but he also understands, the biomechanic side of things, and he understands the old school approach of what it takes mentality-wise. And I don't know if Brant Brown is going to be this, but some of the buzz, whether it's coming from the players or things that we heard talking to other people around the Cardinals over the weekend, he's a guy that's really good with game planning. And he seems to understand how to approach guys with where they're at. For some guys, that means giving them the information. For other guys, it might mean, hey, see ball, hit ball. That's where your approach is. I'll give you more if you want it, but I will meet you where you're at. That is a skill as a coach, and I think Dusty Blake is there, and I think we've seen him kind of get the most out of whatever that means for his pitchers, like Andre Palante, huge development year last year. The bullpen, I think he's been a really nice piece to be able to get whatever the max capacity is out of his bullpen arms over the last few seasons. My hope is we see something similar for Brant Brown. Don't know how likely it is, but he's got some talent to be able to work with if he can mold it the right way.
Yeah, and based on hearing multiple conversations, now there wasn't like I like the see ball, hit ball, and I like the video, but hearing multiple players speak about it, there were different aspects to each person that was talking about Brant Brown. And some of it was video. Some of it was, hey, he was in the cage and we had a talk when we happened to be in, I don't remember if it was Florida or Arizona. I think it was Arizona is where he was. But there were multiple players that said different things that were just a little bit different, where you could tell each one's getting their information or wanting to adjust differently. And I also will say this to add to my reasons for optimism for Jordan Walker. It's not often that you hear somebody talk about making adjustments in the offseason, because let's be honest, The offseason sucks. Everybody hates practice. Everybody hates just doing the drills, trying to make things better. Everybody plays for the games, not the practice. Jordan Walker could have been on that stage and talked about the tweaks that he made. Oh, I like Brant Brown. I like these adjustments we're making. He actually sounded excited about the adjustments, and that's what made me.
Really good point.
That's what made me wonder because nobody else. Like, look,
Dakota Hudson sounded excited about the adjustments.
Yeah, but this is a different ceiling.
Jordan Walker has always sounded pessimistic. He sounded in the past. I mean, you guys remember that interview that he did in Memphis after he got sent down where he was like, I've made some adjustments.
Yeah.
There have been times in the past where when he's talking about the adjustments, it sounds like he's trying to convince himself that this is going to work. Whereas this offseason, I will agree with this, T-Bone, for sure. He sounds like he's totally bought in to what Brant Brown is selling to him.
Well, don't you have to be after last season?
Not really, no.
I mean, I think you kind of do if you want to get back to the majors.
I think yes, but there are guys that sometimes aren't. Some guys are just like, hey, I'm not changing. This is who I am, man, and I'm going to go down swinging my way. And it sounds like Jordan Walker has at least bought into what the Cardinals are selling.
And this isn't a shot against anybody else in the organization, but everybody else that talked about Brant Brown, they were excited about Brant Brown, but they weren't as excited. Like I didn't get the sense of like Alec Burleson loved hitting in the cage with Brant Brown. I think
Donnie,
he likes
I felt that way about.
Okay, I didn't hear Donnie. I wasn't there for Saturday. I just think Donnie loves everything.
Donnie just likes baseball.
That dude's going to be a manager.
Yeah, I could see it.
He's 100% going to be a manager.
With great flow walking out to the mound.
He's going to be a really good one, too.
Walker, for me, that's the most excited I've seen him about adjustments. And now, granted, again, that can all change. Like, I typically don't fall for this stuff, but I believe in the pure talent that he has, and that if someone can get through and unlock it with him, if it is Brant Brown, then it may not be a year in which he becomes a superstar this year. But again, to me, that's never been the goal for Walker this year. The goal has been stabilizing at the major league level. And I wonder if Brant Brown's the guy that's going to have him unlock that potential.
If you want to check out anything from what we did out at Winter Warm-Up, check us out on Twitter at 101ESPN. You can also check our YouTube page. We've got a couple of video recaps over there. T-Bone also posted from yesterday most of the conversation that we had with Bill DeWitt Jr. and Bill DeWitt III. So you can check that out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, time for some NFL quick hitters coming off of the divisional round of the NFL playoffs here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues took down the Vegas Golden Knights last night. They'll be back in action on Thursday when they host Vegas. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This portion update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Alongside Alex and TBone, I'm BK. Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters here on 101 ESPN. An interesting divisional round. Most of the games were solid. What would you guys say was the best game from the weekend? The Bills-Ravens?
Yeah, mine was Bills-Ravens. The Eagles-Rams, I thought it was over, and then I got back into it, and then I thought it was over, and then I got back into it. So, like, the in and out was really fun, and the atmosphere was awesome. But, like, the Bills-Ravens had me locked in from start to finish.
All right, let's start out with this. Of the winners, who was the team that impressed you the most with what they were able to accomplish over the weekend?
Washington. And I know that defense is bad.
That's interesting. Because I think all of them were flawed.
I wasn't really impressed by what the Bills did, and that's not taking anything away from them. Sure. I just kind of expected that outcome because of Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs game, we all know how that one happened. They cheated their way to victory. And then, frankly, like I thought the Rams actually had that in the bag. But, I mean, good on the Eagles. They found a way to pressure Matt Stafford and force him into making a mistake. But I was more impressed by how the Washington Commanders went about their business in that game.
T-Bone, which one impressed you the most with what they did in their win this weekend?
Yeah, my answer is Washington, too. I knew they were going to give up points against Detroit, but I think Detroit had the best offense in the postseason. Mm-hmm. So you knew you were going to give up points. It was more of a matter of, okay, what do I think of that Lions defense? I don't really believe in it. I think, can they stay with them? Can they score, not settle for field goals? And they did exactly that. And Jaden Daniels was impressive. I kind of had the same takeaway from the Bills game. I kind of thought that the Bills would win that football game. Now, they won a little differently than I was expecting. But I thought they were the better football team. The Chiefs, it didn't impress me. I mean, they got outgained significantly and needed some help. And then you add in on top of the Eagles. I know they're flawed. They're majorly flawed. Jalen Hurts can't throw a damn pass. So I would say it was definitely Washington for me.
I would go with the Bills. And the reason why is we've now seen them in the playoffs go up against the number 1 and number 2 rushing defense in the NFL. And what have they done? Run all over those two teams. They are a run first, run second, run third team, and then Josh Allen go be great. And their defense has stepped up in a meaningful way in the postseason as well. They have one of the 5 best turnover differentials in the NFL over the last 30 regular seasons. So what they're doing right now, they've got a clear formula. We don't give the ball away. We take the ball away from you defensively, and we're going to run the ball down your throat. And you're going to like it. That works in January, man. That is a formula as old as time. So I was impressed by what they were able to do because I'm with you guys. I did think they would potentially win that game. I thought the Ravens were the better team, but I thought the Bills would potentially win it. And I thought it would really come down to their running game, and they were able to continue to have the success that they had a week ago against the Denver Broncos. So they were the one that ended up impressing me the most. On the other side of that, who was the team that you left this weekend thinking to yourself, man, they won. I don't know if this is going to work in the next round, though.
Mine was the Eagles. I mean, they barely lost that game, and I said it earlier. Like, Nick Sirianni basically handed the Rams out in the gift basket when they opted to not run the ball with Saquon, who was awesome for them in that game. They opted not to. They turned the ball over. They had to punt it away, and the Rams nearly drove down the field to score that game-winning touchdown. Like, I don't trust Nick Sirianni. I know they looked great. I know that defense looks awesome. Saquon's incredible. I do not trust their head coach, and now I'm going to watch that team go up against a legit all-around team right now with Washington.
That's my team as well, but I almost have to admit, no. The Eagles would be the team that I would say the answer to this question, but it would have been the answer if they had played the Lions. I just don't know what it's going to look like against the Washington Commanders because I haven't seen the Commanders in the postseason play against a good defense yet. Yeah. So the Eagles offense was the thing that gave me the most pause this weekend. I just don't know if it's going to matter in the championship game, which changed for me. I would no longer include them among the teams that can win the Super Bowl. I think there's only 2 that are remaining. I think it's the Bills or the Chiefs. Whoever comes out of the AFC to me will win the Super Bowl.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do worry about the Eagles, against the Commanders because the Commanders have the worst run defense in the playoffs. That's why when we did all those, we did fantasy football for the playoffs. That's why I was big on Irving for Tampa Bay, because I thought Tampa Bay could beat them with the running game.
I thought they handled Jahmyr Gibbs pretty well. Like, I know Gibbs had 2 touchdowns, I think, in the game, but the one was
he had like 200 yards.
But I mean, I thought when the game mattered the most, they handled it pretty well.
I will say this, one team that, because I agree, I think it's the Eagles. If I were to put, like, I think they're close to first, and I will put them second, and I'm putting them on upset watch, and I did not have them getting to the Super Bowl. It's the Chiefs. You can't keep doing this and getting away with it.
Well, we'll see.
And I think
I agree.
well,
What do you
too.
mean by keep doing this?
You can't keep getting outgained, not looking that great offensively. Now, Kelsey finally looked like Travis Kelsey. We kind of expected
all 4
that.
teams that outgained their opponent lost this weekend, right?
Yes, I know. I don't think the Chiefs can keep getting away with this. So they keep remaining in close games, and I think this is finally the year where Josh Allen says, I'm not making the stupid mistake I've made in years past.
If they were playing the Commanders or the Eagles next week, would you feel the same way?
No, because I agree with your sentiment that the only teams that can win the Super Bowl are the Chiefs and Bills.
Agreed.
But I think the Bills are the better football team. And we've seen them beat them already. The Bills beat the Chiefs. I think this is the year Josh Allen gets it done. He's taking care of the football. They know what they need to do to beat Kansas City, which is, hey, we can't make stupid mistakes because the Chiefs aren't going to make stupid mistakes.
I feel the way about this game that I did about the Ravens versus Bills. I think the Bills are the better team. I thought the Ravens were the better team. They're more talented. I think top to bottom, you look at what they did this year, I thought the Ravens were the better team than the Buffalo Bills. They have more blue chip talent. I think the Bills just have a lot of really good players. Very few elite level players, though, on their roster. I feel the same way about the Chiefs right now. Like, you look at the way that they match up against the Bills, I think they're going to win on Sunday. I can't tell you how. I don't know. They've won in a lot of different ways this year, and a lot of the time they win ugly. I think they have really taken over that New England Patriots role in every possible way. The villain of the NFL, I think we have officially arrived at the place of, like, nobody likes the Chiefs. If you're not a Chiefs fan, you are out. There are very few bandwagon fans that are like, I want to root for that team to get to the Super Bowl. I think everybody wants to see the Commanders versus the Bills. That's the Super Bowl everybody is rooting for this year. Nobody wants to see Eagles versus Chiefs. I still think that the Chiefs are going to win that game, and I don't know how they're going to do it. But we'll talk about that plenty as we continue along here on 101 ESPN leading into championship weekend. Last thing as we get through some NFL quick hitters, was there anything that surprised you over the weekend? That really took you off guard and you leave saying, like, man, I didn't expect that?
I don't think so. That's going to sound really odd, but with the exception of that Eagles-Rams game, all of them kind of played out to what I expected. I thought the Rams were going to drive down the field and score that game-winning touchdown. I thought their offense was going to be able to stay toe-to-toe, and then the snow obviously disrupted it. I didn't have any takeaways afterwards and be like, wow, that surprised me.
I had one, and it goes to T-Bone's point. I was a little surprised by how good the Texans defense looked. That Texas defense is legit, man. Those edge rushers are awesome. Number 1 corner is unbelievable. They played really freaking hard. The Texans defense is real, and if they can fix that offensive line next year and add a couple of weapons, Texans aren't that far away. I think they need a new offensive coordinator. They definitely need a new offensive line coach. But the Texans defense is real.
I think the thing that surprised me, and it's kind of tied together, was how competitive the Rams were with the Eagles. Because I didn't think that was a good matchup for them. Because they cannot stop Saquon Barkley, as we saw. I didn't think when the elements were going to arrive for that football game, the Rams are not built to be a team that plays in snow. They are built for, hey, we kind of built a roof over our stadium in L.A. where it's nice. But the second thing that ties into that is I was shocked that Jalen Hurts wasn't able to do much against that Rams defense. Now, that pass rush has been awesome, was awesome for the final stretch. But I thought, okay, maybe that Packers defense is good, which they beat. And I could see, well, maybe Jalen Hurts just has a bad game there. He looked terrible against the Rams again. And I don't know that they can. I agree with BK. They can't win the Super Bowl with him as their quarterback the way he's playing right now.
And they got to win it with Saquon. That's it.
Somebody on the text line from the 314 said, wow, so you guys all picked the Washington to win? We sure did.
Yeah.
They also texted back and said, wow, so you made a lot of money. Congrats.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Well,
We bet it on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois.
I didn't because that pesky 10-leg parlay got me. I got 7 of the 10.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, plenty more NFL throughout the week, including our preview later on this week. We will get into our rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to use. It's easy to enjoy, and it's presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. Blues off tonight, back in action tomorrow.
Nope,
Thursday against the Vegas Golden Knights.
2 days off.
That's rare.
It is very rare.
I was thrown off by it.
They have it twice, I think, in the next 2 weeks.
You'll love to see
we
it.
got next week too.
Yeah, I love it.
We have no sports going on tonight, huh?
Oh man,
I think your Tigers play, don't they?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna be sick tonight.
I knew that.
I'll be sick tomorrow.
They have Texas tonight.
They're ranked, dude. Come on, buy in.
Mizzou with a nice win over the weekend.
Yeah.
Arkansas, potential
That team
letdown
kinda
spot
stinks.
there. They're terrible.
They do, but that's a Mizzou loss, on paper.
Your Illini?
Yeah, they kind of stink.
Whoa, they hung. This is at Michigan
2-point
State.
loss on Sunday.
Yeah, against Michigan State, a
man.
top 10 team in the
I
country.
thought Illinois was a top 10 team in the country.
According to T-Bone.
Yeah, well, they're going to win. They're going to get to the Final
It's
Four.
tough to play at 11 a.m. in
This is a big
freaking
one for Mizzou
Michigan.
tonight. This is a big one for Mizzou. It's a quad 1 win potentially on the road at Texas. I think Mizzou might lose this one. Don't tell anybody.
Mizzou might win. You thought they would lose the last time, and they won.
Yeah, that was against Florida, and that was one hell of a win. Them being able to pull that one off really changed the ceiling, the trajectory of this year. But
Hopefully
Mizzou is a deserving top 25 team right now. They should be in that. They are in that. They're number 22 in the country. This is a big one.
Hopefully Caleb Grill still can't miss.
Dude, that guy's been on a heater.
Yeah.
An absolute heater.
He's like an NBA Jam when you get to that fire mode and you just can't.
I would like to apologize to Dennis Gates, by the way. Last year, he said he thought he had a pretty good team, and then Caleb Grill got hurt, and John Tonje, who's up at Wisconsin right now, he's their leading scorer on the season. It would have looked a little different with those guys in the
You
rotation.
should have kept Tanjay, though, if you're Dennis Gates,
He wanted a fresh start. He had a lot
I
of
can't blame them. They went 0 in 20.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
SEC play was not very fun.
He didn't play last year, injured, and whole thing happened. Mizzou's good, though. So we'll
Better than
watch that
Illinois.
tonight. That'll be what we watch. We'll react to that tomorrow here on the show.
Welcome
Plenty
for
more
telling
from
me.
Cardinals winter warm-up, plus NFL reaction throughout the week here on BK and Ferrario. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. For Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Fastlane's coming up next year on 101 ESPN. Mahomes flop. I don't like it. I don't like when guys flop on the football field.